everyone. Welcome to Vaachna 2022. We'll be starting our session shortly.
The revered activist Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change."
The unprecedented ferocity of the COVID-19 pandemic threw the entire world into disarray, disrupting business models and supply chains. Managers went into damage control mode as the resulting paradigm shift at workplaces created upheavals among the workforce and status quo practices were challenged.
If losing sleep over this wasn't enough, the post-pandemic reinstatement of the workforce came with its plethora of challenges for managers. Albeit, this also meant that employees across organizations had a field day mining up opportunities. Disruption across domains led to creation of new avenues that defied the existing norms of human resources management and proved to be light at the tail end of the metaphoric tunnel of COVID-19. Today, a clarion call has been issued to HR leaders globally. The onus is on the entire industry to join forces and redesign the future of work.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are elated to warmly welcome you to our much anticipated event, Vaachna, the HR Conclave of the Vinod Gupta School of Management, IIT Kharagpur. After going online for the past 2 years, the flagship gathering of VGSoM returned in its offline avatar, convening accomplished corporate leaders under whose aegis we will delve into the subtle intricacies of human resource management in a post-pandemic world.
I am Rakesh Menon.
And I am Rashi Jain.
We are delighted to be a host for the event. The towering gates of IIT Kharagpur are open once again, after a hiatus caused by the pandemic. For all of us aspiring managers, far away from the comfort of our homes and the razzmatazz of bustling offices, the sprawling campus of IIT Kharagpur and the serenity of the nature engulfing it gives us strength, courage, and compassion to seek excellence. Hashtag HomeVGSoM is not just another trending hashtag. It is an emotion that makes our hearts swell with pride and unifies all of us here at VGSoM IIT Kharagpur.
In its 3 decades of luminous existence, VGSoM has grown by leaps and bounds. This sustained growth is amplified by the fact that VGSoM is the preferred place of hiring for industry stalwarts such as Accenture Strategy, Amazon, Deloitte, ITC Limited, PwC, Schindler, Titan, Wells Fargo, and many others. With an average pre-MBA work experience of 24 months from a bevy of industries, our students have been recruited across noteworthy roles like management and technology consultant, product manager, project manager, inventory planner, among others. The average CTC stood at 19.36 LPA, while the highest CTC was 31.98 LPA, wrapping up an excellent placement session last year.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is a library, goes the old saying. Let's take a sneak peek at some of the special moments caught on our campus.
Vinod Gupta School of Management, IIT Kharagpur, founded in 1993 by a distinguished alumnus and lifetime fellow of IIT Kharagpur, Mr. Vinod Gupta, is the oldest B school in the IIT ecosystem. Striving to develop technology-driven future industry leaders, VGSoM offers programs which provide a unique blend of managerial and technological insights into the business world. With a rich legacy spanning over 25 years, VGSoM has grown holistically, winning several accolades and has been consistently ranked amongst the top B schools in the country by several prestigious ranking bodies. The flagship program of VGSoM is a full-time residential program for graduate engineers and master's degree holders in science, economics, and commerce. Featuring a unique mix of lectures, case studies, group projects, and workshops, the institute is currently amongst the best in India. The diverse curriculum consists of a plethora of electives on both core managerial and technological courses. Moreover, it provides valuable industry exposure through a 2-month summer internship program.
VGSoM boasts of a highly experienced faculty fraternity from various fields of management, with most of them having prior industry and corporate experience. Through a unique mix of theoretical and case-based lectures, the faculty strives to bridge the gap between the students' skill base and the industry trends and expectations. Also, the faculty-to-student ratio is one of the best in the country, owing to the less batch strength, which helps in greater individual attention by the faculty towards the student.
A few of the central facilities that are accessible round the clock in the campus are Central Library with a dedicated online digital section, gymnasium, canteen and guest house, swimming pool and other sports facilities. Nurturing the holistic development of future business leaders and contributing significantly to management education over the last 2.5 decades. VGSoM
We hope that the video has primed the audience for what's in store. We hope the best is yet to come, as many more memories will be created and cherished in the coming future at VGSoM.
Before proceeding with the event, we would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to all our distinguished guests and respected faculty members who have spared time out of their busy schedules to adorn this occasion with their august presence.
Ladies and gentlemen, not so long ago we celebrated Diwali, the festival of lights. Light illuminates us to embark on a path of self-realization by eliminating darkness and all insecurities. Hence, to commence the conclave on an auspicious note, we would like to humbly request our acclaimed dignitaries, esteemed VGSoM advisor, respected dean, and our moderator to grace the stage and join us in lighting the lamp. Thank you, guests, advisor sir, dean sir, and our moderator for uplifting the spirits of the audience.
Leadership is the ability to guide others without force into a direction or decision that leaves them still feeling empowered and accomplished. It gives us great pleasure to welcome one such awe-inspiring leader, Professor V.N. Achyutan Nayagan, Dean at the Vinod Gupta School of Management, IIT Kharagpur. A savant in industrial engineering with a humble persona, Professor Nayagan is a prominent alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, where he completed both his master's degree and doctorate. He has vast experience in the fields of industrial engineering and operations, with a keen interest in condition monitoring, product design, quality, and reliability engineering, amongst others. He is also the author of 3 books and has published more than 115 papers across international journals and conferences.
We would like to humbly request Professor Srinivasan S. to felicitate our beloved Dean and adorn the occasion.
Without further ado, we would like to welcome our beloved Dean, Professor Nayagan, to address the gathering and share his insightful thoughts with us.
Good morning. Very good morning and a warm welcome to everyone. So I am extremely happy today and privileged to welcome you all to one of the IIT Kharagpur's most coveted events in its vast array of prominent ones, the HR Conclave, or we also call it a Vaachna. Every year, Vinod Gupta School of Management organizes this flagship event by inviting several industry stalwarts to a colloquium to discuss some of the most pressing issues of today. So we are delighted to orchestrate this event that will enlighten the students. So in fact, when we talk about HR Conclave, in fact, the human resources, like many other resources in any organization has different types of resources, like say plant and machinery, okay, capital investment, and land, raw materials, finished goods. So many different type of resources, or maybe assets, you can say. And of course, some of them may be assets and some of them may be liabilities also. In the similar way, we also have the human resources. All of you know, all of us knows. In fact, all other resources maybe we can buy, or maybe we can try to get. Even capital we can try to get through some method. But if you don't have the right human resource, then managing the other resources is not that easy. I think all of you know about it. So managing the human resource has become one of the most important tasks of managers actually. Okay. So if you can really manage the human or human resources in the best possible way, starting from the initial assessment of the human resource requirement to recruitment, to giving them jobs, and then giving them all facilities, okay, and promotions, and how to keep them happy, how to retain them, how to motivate them, okay. So this plays now very, very important role of managers actually, okay. So if you can't retain the human resource, and if people are leaving very frequently, then it is a really difficult situation. So, and also managing certain special problems like, say for example, last 2 years, so most of our industries or maybe the say IT industries, so they were of the work from home type of atmosphere, okay, work from home. So now what HR people are facing in such industries, so even though they have told all of them to come back, okay, but there is a slight resistance from the employees, okay, for going to the office actually, okay. So this has been experienced. So they are giving options, come 2 days in a week, 3 days in a week, something like that, trying all methods, how to go ahead with this new situation, okay. Situations are changing, So now the pandemic is over, almost over in fact. So the situation has come that we come back to the offline type of working, but then there is some resistance, even though people are not telling openly, but there is some hesitation, okay, because people are used to work from home culture, that type of things. So, okay, so this is really challenging. So we will come to know only after maybe another few months or so. So what is the trend? In fact, some people are even saying that this is the future. In fact, work from home is going to the future for at least some industries, if not all the industries. So some industries are thinking in that way, whether that will be more productive or the other one will be more productive, okay. So all these issues are going on. So really it is a very, very challenging job to manage the human resource, okay, how to get the maximum out of the human resource. And a poor managed human resource, all of you know, so you cannot manage any other resource, okay. All the resources are worth provided the human resource is managed well, okay. Otherwise all other resources will be of no value, okay. So this is a important thing we have to consider. And let me continue. It is an honor to have such an august panel today with some of the most astute and ingenious minds in the country participate in a discussion sharing diverse views. So I welcome all of you once again. Today, as we move past one of the biggest black swan events in recent history, workplaces and work, as we see, have changed beyond recall. The COVID-19 pandemic struck almost as if a switch was flipped, and we traveled at a blistering pace towards technology. So technology was the answer, because of the COVID situation. So we tried to manage through online methods and other methods. That a compelling array of opportunities and challenges has sprung to life. A call out has been made to industry leaders globally. It has become imperative to bring different opinions to redraw the future of work. The esteemed panelists have joined us today to deliberate on this shifting paradigm. Vinod Gupta School of Management, IIT Kharagpur, as all of you know, is one of the few premier institutes in the country that can boast world-renowned leaders, influencers, and drivers of change. Our students and alumni have been shaped by our famous motto, dedicated to the service of the nation. Their contribution has left a lasting impact on both their field of work and society. In this very gathering here today, many of you will go on to become successful business leaders and be the torch bearers of excellence and as ambassadors of the great institute. It becomes imperative that your time here prepares you for what awaits you in the corporate world. It is definitely going to be one such event that will allow you to learn from the experts. I'm sure that all of you here have been eagerly waiting for this day to come. So without any further delay, I wish you all the best and enjoy the proceedings. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your views with us, sir. It has undoubtedly enlightened the minds of the aspiring leaders and set the tone for today's proceedings. We are ever grateful for your constant guidance and support. Now, we would like to request Professor Srinivasan S. to present a token of appreciation to our respected Dean.
Learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, and never regrets. With utmost joy, we would like to welcome our guest of honor for the day, Professor Pradeep Kumar Ray, Emeritus Professor of Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering and Advisor, VGSoM, IIT Kharagpur. A maestro in industrial engineering, yet a humble person, Professor Ray is a cherished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, where he fulfilled both his master's degree and doctorate. Professor Ray holds vast experience in healthcare systems optimization, service performance modeling, and ergonomics. Currently, he is acting as a chief expert, guiding APO-sponsored projects for 6 Asian countries. Professor Ray holds various accolades to his name. He is also a recipient of the ORSIPC Mahalo Nobis Award and is a distinguished fellow of the Institution of Engineers India as well as the World Academy of Productivity Science. We would like to humbly request our beloved Dean Professor Nayagan to felicitate Professor Pradeep Kumar Ray and embellish the occasion.
Thank you, Nayagan sir. Now, we would like to invite Professor Ray to address the gathering and impart his wisdom to the students.
My esteemed faculty colleagues, dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries of the dais, my what should I say? Means my source of inspiration, whatever I have learned, whatever the little knowledge I have, is all because of you, the students. So, my dear students of VGSoM and the departments of IIT Kharagpur, very good morning to all of you. And I don't want to discuss in detail about this, the HR conclave. Just the theme of this conclave, you have already, the read. That is, the redesigning of the future of work. What is this work? It's very important, in fact, because whenever we talk about human resource management, ultimately, we are relating a particular human being to the work in an organized, the system. Now, whenever, and as you may be knowing, that motivating someone to work, it's not a easy task, in fact, because you are dealing with human beings, the most complex entity. Okay, it could be the worst, it could be the best. You know everyone. That's the problem dealing with the human beings. And many a time, the management is equated with human resource management. Then you have learned many things, fine. You know what is the technology, I am an engineer, so I know what is an engineering system. But then, as soon as you start working at the shop floor, you have to manage. What is this manage? Now, this particular term has got several connotations, several meanings, in fact. Okay. So here, what do you try to do? You know how the management has been defined to get the things done. Obviously, by getting the involvement of the people. Now, I remember, in fact, you know, one of what we can say, the most respected teachers and the mentors, Professor K.C. Shahu, I remember many years back, he gave a lecture on, the topic is, why do people work? Why do you people work? There are hundreds of, the conditions. He explained 2 hours talk. I will never ever forget, in fact. Now the work, how do you define? Now if you work, fine. If you do not work, that's also working. Okay, your mind is working. And I'm not referring to, the devil's workshop, but still, this is a challenging assignment. There had been in the case, in the history of mankind, whenever you talk about the work, you talk about the labor, you talk about the slaves, you talk about, the other persons. Okay, but you don't talk about the work, okay, how to measure work of managing director or the CEO. Previously it was the case. Hey, what is this? I am the CEO, I do mental work. Can you define or can you measure the mental work? Yes, there are hundreds of researchers that have said, yes, the way you measure the work of an operator, the same thing, okay, you can measure the work of a managing director. Now, the next question is very important, in fact. I am working for whom? Is it for myself or for the organization? It's a very difficult thing, getting my point. Now, the next thing is whether I am working, I am intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. It's very difficult queries, in fact. So obviously what we expect, that when you go through the educational program and management, so these are the, the questions you have in your mind all the time. Okay, here is learning. So now the question is, in today's context, what if you go through, there are hundreds of researchers, hundreds of practitioners, what they mention. In the today's context, for the last 20 or 30 years, the kinds of work environment we get, the kinds of the theories we have, the theory X, theory Y, theory Z, okay, like laissez-faire, many kinds of theories, like Bloom's theories, many theories are there. Unfortunately, those theories are not applicable in today's context. So what is the motivation theory? Nobody knows. So it's in one of the research areas, in fact. Many researchers, maybe, the people with finest minds, they've been working, okay, throughout the world. But today's, the kinds of world you are living in, okay, when you join a company, the kinds of the interactions we have, in the history of mankind, possibly no one has, faced this sort of problem. Obviously, I'm not referring to the kinds of problems as slaves in the factory system some 300, 400 years back they used to face. Yes, so this is the route you must be knowing, in fact, like Uncle Tom's Cabin, you might have gone through, in fact, okay. So, the question is that how to motivate human being, whatever may be the technology, whether it's an automated technology or whatever, hundreds of technologies were used, but ultimately, within the technological system, within the work system, it is a very good the development throughout the world, in fact. The organization is focusing on human being. Okay. So, till late 80s, the people tried to, many researchers, they tried to automate the system. Hey, no need of engaging the human beings. Obviously, they used to live in a fool's paradise. They failed miserably. Okay, so whatever it is, whether it's an automated system, a flexible automation system, hard automation system, okay, so, or it's a mechanization, in fact, the man or the human behind the system is most important, and there you are focusing on. Yes, I am a mechanical engineer. I know what is an engineering system, but when someone is standing in front of the lathe machine or in front of the FMS, okay, where his mind lives. So that's the challenging assignments throughout the world. Okay, all sorts of the organizations. I'm not referring to the traders organization. Please, okay, the trading the business I'm not referring to the business organizations. Okay, so the organizations which think about the human beings, okay, welfare, its future orientations and all, its health, occupational health and all. So this is one very important issue in fact. And as we have been saying, many cases, suppose you create the best possible work environment, you will find 10 to 20% of the people, they will be creating the problem. In other extreme, suppose the work environment is extremely poor, but still you will find 10 to 20% people, they will never mind. They're intrinsically motivated. Respect them, recognize them. That's the way you say that, yes, sir, I don't believe in the level 1 leadership. I don't believe in level 2 leadership. I believe in level 3 leadership. Unfortunately, in many cases, what happens? So you develop this technology, automated systems you are talking about. That the manager, he finds the kinds of the leadership he believes in. That's the 200-year-old, 300-year-old, the level 1 leadership. Obviously, it's a failure case. Are you getting my point? So what we say in today's context, right? So where each and every individual's potential as well as the capability is respected, possibly for the first time in the history of mankind. Okay. So what is important is that whether your boss, gone are those days when we used to say, when I joined the company, it's a very nice company in fact, okay. So I don't have any fear of losing my job. Today that's happening in fact. In the other extremes, like I don't want to name those companies, they say, hey, you are continuing with this company for 3 years or 4 years, something wrong with you. Whereas the other extremes, there are many Japanese organizations, for the history, there's a lifetime employment. I am created an organization. Can you, as a managing director, you say, yes, here is, I will create an organization, the environment, and it's a lifetime. You will be contributing your potential, your worth, okay, to the cause of this company. So obviously there are models in Japan's, in fact, lifetime employment. But then because of many other reasons, in fact, today they are unable to follow this lifetime employment. So the company is judged by its ability to provide lifetime employment. Like, okay, so these are the issues, in fact. Like, the first time when I joined company, I asked my boss, sir, will you allow me to make mistakes? Obviously, I'll be making mistakes. The learning, the method, you are learning, you're joining. They said, why not? Are you getting my point? So immediately I have a feeling that yes, I intend to learn. Possibly when I interact with my, the students or the ex-students over there, they're occupying very high position in many companies. What they say, sir, we do not get any response. I know that the boss is saving his job, and so also I'm saving his job. It's like, you are living for today only, not for tomorrow. So that sort of pressures you have, the young generation today. So you must understand, while we develop in motivation theory, while you create or while we lead someone, we must know that what kind of mindsets you have. Another important problem I'd like to highlight, those the many US companies, European companies, okay, they have tried to change your attitude. I am the leader, I am your boss. Okay, so can I change the attitude of my subordinate? And this is the most difficult job, in fact. It's not that because the attitude is developed, your mindset is developed at the age of 11 or 12. That was scientists have mentioned, in fact, they've studied. Getting my point? So anyway, so I am sure that this, the learned panel of, the executives or the dignitaries, they will be dealing with this problem. We must, whenever we say that we discussed on human resource management, you're absolutely at the ground level, absolutely. And gone are those days when you say, okay, you belong, you are labor, you are a gangman. Even these terms they use, in fact, in the railways. The gangman, the term we use. Today, fortunately, those, the terms we do not use, in fact. It's the most derogatory term we have been using in. Okay. So, but today, what I require that each and every one is different, individual difference. That's the theory, that's the science. So whether I am in front of you, boss, whether the boss is recognizing my potential, that's it. Or, so that is the challenge, in fact, it's not that easy. That's why the level 3 leadership is, they have proposed. Okay, level 3 leadership, it's a absolutely generic term. It's not like blah, blah, blah and something like, okay, or Baba's talk, no, right? Okay, so just these things come to my mind, in fact. I'm sure that you will be discussing all these issues because the kinds of problems you are facing, possibly for the first time in the history of the mankind, all the companies that are facing the problem. Okay, because there's no motivation theory. That's what I'm going through. So anyway, it will come up, in fact. You have long experience, in fact. And if you can interact with your students, okay, the kinds of the situations you face and what is the solution, and no solution is perfect, no solution in a given constraints. So that's the way, obviously our students will be most motivated, okay. And the kinds of, the learning exercise or the projects you can offer, so that also you can interact with them. So thank you so much, in fact. Okay, whenever I start speaking, I don't know what to end. Anyway, thank you so much, in fact. Okay, so it will be a nice experience for all of you because this program is made for you. You are in the learning phase, okay, and you ask hundreds of questions. No questions are silly. Okay, so there is a saying, by Nehru, I always quote. So Nehru has a quote, any fool may ask you a question which even a well-informed person, okay, may fail to answer. Getting my point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your immense knowledge with us. These have opened the eyes of our students in functioning towards a sublime career. We are ever grateful for your constant support. Now, we would request our beloved Dean to present a token of gratitude to Professor Ray. Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference. Before plunging into what we have gathered here for, we would like to take the opportunity to introduce our illustrious panel.
Life is a succession of lessons which must be lived to be understood. We are exultant to present an agile leader whose transformational strategies have been a roaring success. Welcoming our first panelist for the day, Ms. Apurva Bapna, Chief Culture Officer at WPP India. An alumna of the Lady Shri Ram College for Women and the India International Institute of Management, Ms. Bapna has worked in a gamut of domains across firms such as the Hindustan Times, Hutchison Wimpoa Private Limited, the Times of India Group, Group M Media, and so on. Talent development, business transformation, change management, culture integration are some of the key areas where Ms. Bapna's prowess is second to none. At WPP India, she leads the Unstereotype Alliance and is also responsible for driving the diversity and inclusion agenda. She is a recipient of Ad Age's Award for Global Leading Women of 2022 and has featured on the Yahoo Involves Role Model list of 2022 for her astounding work in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. A certified trainer and an ardent devotee of the art of living, Ms. Bapna is also serving as the steering committee member at the Confederation of Indian Industry. It's a privilege to have you here, ma'am. We are eager to draw inspiration from your vast stockpile of experiences.
As a token of gratitude, we would like to request Professor Parma Barai to felicitate our exalted panelist, Ms. Apurva Bapna. Thank you, Parma ma'am. The capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice. It is my great pleasure to introduce a woman whose zest for lifelong learning sets her apart. Our next panelist for today is Ms. Hema Mani, Regional Director at Linux International. An alumna of the Xavier Institute of Management, where she specialized in human resources during her MBA, Ms. Hema's repertoire is decorated with a rich experience of over 26 years in strategic human resources. Her skills across site operational management, talent and organization development, community engagement, and many more are par excellence. Ms. Mani is a leadership coach certified under Korn Ferry Leadership Architect and Marshall Goldsmith, and certified OD facilitator from International OD Federation. A passionate leader, Ms. Mani's stellar profile has seen her work across organizations such as Kelly Consultants, PwC, the Jan Group of Institutions, I2 Technologies, and Honeywell. For the past 13 years, she has been spearheading the HR department at Linux International with her unparalleled expertise, bagging umpteen laurels for the firm. Ms. Mani is also serving as the chairwoman of the CII, Indian Women Network in Tamil Nadu. We feel very fortunate to have you here with us, ma'am, and we hope to imbibe from your wisdom at this conclave.
As a token of appreciation, we would like to invite our Professor Vimla Rani to felicitate our esteemed panelist, Ms. Hema Mani. Thank you, Vimla ma'am. It is not how much we give, but how much love we put into giving. We are exhilarated to introduce an astute leader whose solicitude is far-reaching. Please welcome our next panelist, Mr. Mukesh Tiwari, Chief Human Resources Officer at the Akshay Patra Foundation. An alumnus of the National Institute of Business Management, Mr. Tiwari has successfully capped off certification programs from some of the premier B schools across the country, such as Institute of Management Technology, Ghaziabad, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai, and the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. Mr. Tiwari has applied his phenomenal knowledge across a diverse range of industries, working for companies such as HDFC Standard Life, ING, Caterpillar Incorporated, Aberdare Technologies Private Limited, and others. His treasure trove of skills is not just limited to global client handling and strategic HR management, but also includes a technical edge concerning strengthening HR data integrity and cost optimization. Currently, Mr. Tiwari is driving the HR business partnering and positioning the HR function as a key business enabler to achieving Akshay Patra's strategic goals. We are very happy to have you with us today, sir, and we look forward to garner exceptional insights from your experiences.
As a token of gratitude, we would like to invite Professor Ajay Kumar Mishra to felicitate our admired panelist, Mr. Mukesh Tiwari. Thank you, Ajay sir. We keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we are curious and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. We are thrilled to introduce our next panelist who brims with the spirit of curiosity and learning, Mr. Sajjad Ahmed, Senior Director, Capgemini. Mr. Ahmed drove various strategic business objectives that can be addressed through learning and development at Capgemini. Before moving to HR, he played many business roles in fields such as project management, cloud infrastructure services, talent management, and HR controls. His uncanny knack for molding future leaders has assisted him to pioneer multiple projects at General Electric, Computer Associates, and HCL Technologies. Throughout his extensive career of 2 decades, he has demonstrated remarkable leadership skills in guiding managers for effective functioning, delivering organization-wide performance management rollout, and much more. We are extremely thrilled to host you, sir. We keenly await the opportunity to assimilate insights from your vast experience.
As a token of appreciation, we request our Professor Chandrasekhar Mishra to felicitate our distinguished panelist, Mr. Sajjad Ahmed. C.S. Mishra, sir.
Due to unforeseen circumstances, Dr. Ankita Singh could not join us today.
With all of our panelists primed and ready to coalesce ideas and perspectives, we take immense pleasure in presenting our moderator for the day, our very own beloved Professor Srinivasan S. A cognoscente in human resource management, Professor Srinivasan is an alumnus of IIT Madras, where he completed his doctorate. His research areas encompass employee engagement, employee experience, HR analytics, and organization behavior, among others. A ubiquitous presence in the campus activities, Professor Srinivasan's teaching methodologies have always piqued the interest of students. He is also one of the handful recipients of the legendary DART scholarship in 2016. Apart from his academic endeavors, as the incumbent chairperson of MBA admissions, he is piloting the admissions cell at VGSoM to greater heights. We are privileged to have your persistent support, sir. We are eager to draw inspiration from your vast repository of experiences.
As a token of appreciation, we would request VGSoM Student Council President Aditi Samanta to felicitate our beloved Professor Srinivasan. Thank you, Aditi.
The present atmosphere of uncertainty calls for a change in the conventional ways of envisioning and functioning of work in offices. a gripping array of opportunities and challenges, such as moonlighting, gig economy, great resignation, capability modeling, quiet quitting, among others, have sprung up.
The catastrophic event that we witnessed in the past couple of years has casted a spell of technological innovation and new ways of thinking. And the time has come for employers and employees to come together and redesign the future of work. In this context, we are delighted to announce the theme of this year's event, Navigating Tomorrow, Redesigning the Future of Work.
The stage is set for a galvanizing discussion. It is now time for us to step off the driving seat and hand over reins to our moderator, Professor Srinivasan. Sir, the stage is yours.
Okay, very good morning to all of you and a warm welcome to all the panelists. Thank you for making this event more successful with your presence. So, as we all seen, theme of today's panel discussion is Navigating Tomorrow, Redesigning the Future of Work. Yeah, this theme, the title of the theme cannot be more relevant than today's context, as we see that, I think most of us were talking about and thinking about and reflecting about how things are changing and unfolding in an organization situations, where we've been seeing that every week, when the moment we open the business standard or the business news, all the time we talk about how employees are reacting to how companies are approaching them. We talk about moonlighting, there are a lot of debates, and we talked about hybrid mode. We talk about every time employees are becoming more empowered now than before, and organizations also started to involve and engage them more effectively than ever before. So the process of employer and employee relationship is ever growing, and we've seen that just before the pandemic, all industries were actually learned and reaching a maturity to how to embrace the technological disruptions happening. And all of a sudden, we see this COVID-19 pandemic from nowhere, and it has actually disrupted everything, and it has started from the scratch, where we moved from offline to online and testing out new way of doing things and proposing a hybrid mode, where we are seeing that certain reluctance, certain acceptance, and we are also seeing that the future is even more going to be uncertain and very challenging. With this, a lot of uncertainties are coming up, but at the same time, organizations look at it as an opportunity. Where we are talking about moonlighting, there is always a debate. No, there is no consensus on this moonlighting. Whether some company says, as long as my employees are happy doing it, fine, as long as they do not disturb my functioning. And some companies look at from an ethical point of view, that's still a debate. And if you look at a gig economy, companies look at it as an opportunity and as well as a threat as well. So what do I see? And also we are talking about great resignations. When this great resignation was talking about, then I read an article, very interesting article from HBR. They said, do not look at it as a great resignation, look at it as a great aspiration from an employee perspective. So as an employer, we are concerned about the resignations, an employee looking at it as an opportunity. So what do I see? As an organization can also tap that opportunity to make it as a great aspiration for an organization as well. And we are also looking at several other challenges. We are talking about quiet quitting. So now we are moving away from disengagement to a quiet quitting, where maybe your terminologies are new, but the characteristics or functions are similar or same. So now the challenges are even more than ever for an employer as well as an employee. Now we are talking about how do we embrace or how do we look forward. So looking at these challenges, I think this theme is most relevant in today's context, as well as probably may not be on this dais, probably on your boardroom you may be discussing about it. How do we do about it? How do we go about it? How are we going to see ourselves? Because the kind of disruptions happening, it is not even going to stay for a month. We are looking at every month we have new things are coming up. Probably my client requirements are changing and my customers' expectations are changing. And at the same time, one of the important stakeholder, employees' expectations are changing. And very recently, we were with one of our research scholars, we were discussing about doing a research on employee experience. And what we said, okay, a lot of survey works are happening. So is that the only way to address? Organizations look at a lot of potential from exit interviews. Does this exit interview gives insights? Or is employee open enough in sharing these experiences during an exit interview? Not necessarily, or maybe to an extent. Then comes, is there any other avenues to look after what my employees are actually talking about? We are looking at, okay, Glassdoor, Ambition Box, and so far, and we are looking at, okay, can we get some insight that so that I can sense what my employees are feeling really? So there comes, organizations are looking at where do I get information about? This information seeking is not just about seeing how I am, but I am looking at how I should be. So keeping this, and I wanted to open this panel discussions. I just wanted to discuss with you all how to go in a flow. I have set up questions to deliberate on so that, and also we'll pick up certain questions from you as well. So to begin with, I'll pick up a question and maybe we'll go in a sequence. Then we come back like this. Will that work for you all? Sure. Okay, great. Yeah. And before I begin, this panel is a great gender mix, I would say. When BCCI talking about gender parity, been paying women and men cricketers at the same pace. And we are so delighted that maybe fortunate, unfortunate, we had 5, it has become to 4, then the equation is good now. Yeah. So thank you for joining us, and we'll begin. I'll just start with my first questions, and as the flow goes, and we will pick up different questions from the panel member as well. Okay, so this is very interesting. Maybe the last couple of years you may be hearing in any discussions you have been there. In last 2 years, what type of challenges did you find most difficult as an HR leader to navigate in those challenging situations, and what are your key takeaways from those challenges that you faced?
Okay, so I'm the first guy, right? The biggest challenge is how to make sure that our team is motivated. Are we able to instigate and ignite the purpose? Many a times we get into a very workaholic syndrome that you come at 9 o'clock, you go at 5 o'clock, and that's it. But gone are those days. We are now working almost 20 hours, many a times almost the entire day. So what ignites an employee or what ignites a leadership team is a very strong purpose. If we are able to navigate and articulate in such a way that it goes in the brains of every individual employee. Now something very important, I must say that, Professor Dave was talking about that what is motivating an employee to continue with an organization. I was talking yesterday with a couple of you students. What is very, very important is whether you are working for Google or you are working for Caterpillar or any of the organizations, please do go through their values. And does that value gel well or syncs well with your own individual values or not? No organization is a bad organization. It's the people with whom you are working that differentiates. So to begin with, let's continue our discussion and then take things forward from there onwards.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Good morning to everybody. Pleasure to be here and be amongst all of you. I look forward to learning from each of you because you're part of an academic institution and we are really at a distance. But to straightly deep dive into the question Professor was asking, what really significantly changed over the last 2 years? First of all, Jan 2020 is when my team and we usually have an annual retreat where we do our goal planning. The minds are set, so this is what we are going to do. And this was in November of 2019, so we had the retreat. And January 14th, I flew to China, which is also part of my assignment because I have a team there. Jan 19th, 2020, I returned back into India in that flight, which was the last flight from Shanghai to India and anywhere in the world. Because that's when the pandemic landed and the world began changing. To much of our disbelief so, right? In Jan, Feb, all of us sitting in Chennai office said, COVID will not hit Chennai because it's very humid, it's very hot, it will not affect us. We're going to have a peaceful time in southern India. March 2020, we have our employees slowly getting affected because we had employees who are traveling. You know, we are a multinational company with operations around the world. We had roughly about 12 of our employees who were traveling across Europe and America. And the biggest cause for concern for my colleague Karthikeyan, who is also sitting here, and me was, how do we get them back to the country? Because flights were all called off. How do we make sure the families are comforted? Because there's very high level of anxiety. Our phones suddenly started ringing 24/7. And they were quarantined, if you recollect. You know, there was massive quarantine. How do we protect the families from these employees, make sure tests are done, make sure they're safe, they're back with their families? So that was the first phase of change. And I realized my entire goal plan that I did in November has to be finding the nearest dustbin. And that's what it essentially did, because the world just tumbled, right? And I found myself, along with my team, completely at the center stage of the company and all its activities. Everything that happened in the organization revolved around the decisions we as a team were taking, right? We have projects that are globally deployed. Projects need to continue to happen because work needs to happen, because money needs to flow in, right? That's what management science is all about. How do we make the money? So projects had to happen. And we work in a hardcore mechanical engineering space. We have groups of people who are touching systems and machines. We have groups of people who are the electronics experts who work on hardware boards. These are not people who can easily work remote. You can't just lift and shift a laptop to your home and start working and make sure your new product design is working, the reliability parameters are all functioning very well, and you have a great product in hand. We had to make sure machines are transported to people's homes. We had to make sure labs were set up at homes wherever it was required. And a big realization dawned upon me and my colleagues that we had to shift from just plain speaking HR to becoming truly business partners. So that was a big shift I personally saw, because it was a huge overnight learning for us to understand what does an electronics engineer need for his work to happen very efficiently. He needs that microprocessors. And guess what? We had a huge global supply shortage of chips, which all of you probably are studying as case studies. We struggled it through. So remember, I have a team in China, which is primarily supporting the sourcing operations. And what we realized were chips were not found, right? And suddenly there was a huge shortage of Microsoft microprocessor chips. I recollect my HR leader in Shanghai, what she did, and I'd like to share it here. The team was struggling with actually buying these microprocessor chips because they were not found, and it was complete lack of supply. So the team were literally going door to door around the markets they knew, get whatever quantities. Now remember, in a large company there are processes, there are POs, and a large process of procuring. Procurement is itself a huge process. We had to completely quash that entire process. My sourcing team went door to door to collect whatever chips were available. My HR leader sitting in Shanghai, she started invoicing them literally. So she was no more a HR. She was part of the sourcing team doing that whole process because she knew that team had to be supported. The reason I quote that is, HR, the way we look at it, the way we study in those books, and just like what Professor Ray studied, all those motivational theories just flew out of the window. We just had to be business. We had to, danda karna hai. That was the approach, right? So my team was doing that. So the biggest learning for me was, the boundaryless thinking. That for me was the huge learning. And I realized it really fast because months previous to that, we were part of various conferences, NASCOM, SHRM, where a lot of speakers were speaking about. Amit sir and I were in a conference in Hyderabad where we were speaking about VUCA world, We were speaking about, हाँ ये आएगा, जब आएगा देखा जाएगा. And here we are sitting in March 2022, and it's bam on our face, right? The sense of brittleness around us, because employees' families were getting affected, employees were getting affected. You know, my colleagues and I, we had to scout not only hospitals, but medicines, make sure families got food on time, made sure that we were available 24/7 while even our families were affected. So a huge degree of empathy wave that, you know, that I learned out of that whole phase. Second is a high state of anxiety that all of us expressed, right? Not just because of the pandemic, but the way the work itself was. This whole supply shortage, how will work get performed, you know, and we are a manufacturing industry. We can't do remote. There has to be a space where men and machine touch hands and hug each other, and those machines go out and get sold. Right? So a high degree of anxiety. I also experienced non-linear thinking. You know, who knew my HR leader, a very well qualified person she is, would go invoicing microchips? Who knew my colleagues who are extremely well qualified on my team would take their cars, travel 50, 100 kilometers just to procure an injection? That's not really on their job description, but yet they go out and they do that, right? Very non-linear thinking. And finally, incomprehensible. We never knew what was the next day like. And the beauty of that phase was all of us were sitting here, and many of us in the HR team, we formed a community. Suddenly we realized the power of being part of community. Suddenly we realized the power of being part together and going through this journey together. And I'm so glad that, you know, there's a lot of beauty that came out of the whole thing, but I guess I'll get time to share that later.
Thank you so much. Actually, you know, what was really interesting to look at, you know, the role was not, you know, restricted to a specific job description, right? And things have changed, and rightly said, no, boundaryless thinking and non-linear thinking. You know, we do not know what is going to unfold the very next day. So thank you so much for adding your insights. Yeah, over to
So you know, I took on the role of the Chief Culture Officer for a advertising communications network on 1st of March 2020. This role didn't exist. It was the first time that a role like this was created, and our job was to create a culture in the organization. Now, traditionally and conventionally, culture is created when you meet people, there is a human connection, there's a human interaction. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen because 1st of March, I took the role. 17th of March, my company announced a lockdown, which was 4 days before Narendra Modi announced the national lockdown. And we were all told to sort of go back to wherever we were. I, at that point, thought that this is going to get over in 1 week, you know, at best 10 days. So I went back home to Jaipur from Delhi, thinking that I'll come back soon and things will get back to normal. Obviously, that wasn't the case, right? So building a virtual culture at that point seemed like a challenge that, I mean, I didn't know how would we do that. And also, there was no precedence to the role, right? So literally, we were working with a blank canvas to say, how would you fill colors on that canvas to make it useful for people? Secondly, for my company, work from home is a concept that didn't exist because we are in a service industry. We are constantly meeting clients, our partners to deliver you know, advertising, to deliver consumer insights, research, and things like that. For us, work from home was a concept that was very sort of new, and we didn't have a policy around that. And now suddenly everybody was told to work from home. So much so that the studios where ads are actually made, shot, produced, edited, also had to move to people's homes. And the team has done phenomenal work over those 2 years. We've won businesses at the back of the work that was created at home, which also meant the biggest challenge that came for us was this whole embracing the new world of digital and technology for our people, because you know, you're used to working in a physical space and suddenly you're being told to move into a virtual space. So a lot of focus was put on upskilling for our people. In fact, in the first year, which was 2020, for the 11,000 people in the country, we ran close to about 75 different kinds of programs, not just, of course, on digital upskilling, also on mental health and many other things that we started focusing on as the trends kept sort of evolving. And the third thing, you know, which I think him also alluded to, was just creating a support system. The first wave was new to us. We were all learning what's happening in the first wave, how people are reacting and responding. By the time we reached the second wave, I think things had got a little clearer. Also, that second wave was far more fatal than the first wave, as we all know. My own organization, we lost 26 employees to COVID, and of course, a lot of family members. And that was quite a shock as an organization for us. So we actually, the collective power of the teams and the leadership, I have never seen that come to play so beautifully in tough times. And that's, in fact, the challenge also throws up certain things that make you recognize and appreciate the organization. I think the collective effort of the leadership and teams in helping people find, as she said, hospital beds, oxygen concentrators, medicines, and so many things that we were able to sort of figure and help people. I think that set the sort of the tone for the future to come and sort of look forward to the future. So yeah, I think that's, for us, that was a big thing those days.
Yeah, thank you for your insights. Now, if you look at what is very interesting, the moment we are talking about what are the challenges you were facing in an organization, if you look at what our panelists are talking about, primarily not centered around the work, it is about our employees. Now, employees is not just one who has, as Professor P.K. Rai said, it is about what he does, it is about how he exists in a system. So they're all talking about the challenge, most important challenge being that how do I keep my employees and concern about their immediate family environment as well. I think what we see is that now organizations do not restrict themselves to look at employee as an independent entity. Rather, they started to look at employee as a larger sphere with the family and other dependents. That is actually very interesting to look at. Now you see that I think even I discussed the same one when you talked about culture. So very recently, the last week, with I think one of the sections which I was discussing, when talked about debating, we are debating about who prefers to go for permanent work from home setup. Some were saying yes, some say no, and we discussed about deliberated on a culture. So how do you all of a sudden talk about passing on a culture of an organization in a remote setup where I don't physically see my co-workers and an employee, or do not even sense that I'm in an organization. Only when I open my laptop, I feel that I'm in a company. Otherwise, I feel like I'm at home. So how do you, resonate the culture of an organization? That's definitely a greater challenge, because we always, especially in HR fraternity, we always believe that culture keeps them intact. To keep them with my company, the culture plays a role than talking about the perks and the benefits. Right? Yeah, thank you for that insight. Very interesting. Over to Mr.
Thank you. Good morning. And the benefit of going last is everything is covered. Yeah. But I will just call out, and I'll be very brief on this, because a lot has already been spoken. So the question is on challenge, and the second is what was the key takeaway for me, right? So like anybody else, I was also going through a personal challenge. My mother-in-law was in the ICU for 2 months on a non-invasive ventilator. So you can imagine visiting the ICU 3 times in a day, seeing your loved one dying. So as a leader, I had a responsibility back in my office to take care of the employees who are going through their personal circumstances. And as an employee, I was also going through my personal circumstance. So the key takeaway out of that whole experience for me was, we have always been saying that look at an employee as a leader. But that time I realized that look at the leader as also an employee. Because the kind of leaders I had who treated me and gave me that enough space to manage my personal circumstances, my organizational citizenship went up. So today when I look at my leaders who are under me, that experience I try and bring in, trying to understand they might be going through something. So that's a key takeaway for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So though you said the last movers, there's certain limitations. We are going to start with you for the next questions. Yeah, so keeping that, as I wanted to add on what you were saying. Now, primarily if you look at, as I think, we also discuss in the classes, as everybody have different roles to play. As you say, you may be a leader, but at the same time, you also have your personal life and you play a different role as well. So it's very interesting to look at, see leader as an employee. The moment an employee sees always a leader as a boss, rather than look at a leader as an employee, because the employee, when the moment you think a leader as an employee, that employee will go through the same as you go through as well, right? So the more of an empathy, and you start to relate with the leader than you distending yourself with a boss. So thank you for that interesting insight. Yeah. So the next question is also maybe adding on to the previous one. So we specifically talking about certain events which we are talking about, let's say refer to the pandemic, or probably certain companies as we are talking about, Russia-Ukraine crisis, where especially maybe relevant to your industry that you're talking about, that would have disrupted the supply chain as well, where you're talking about a chip manufacturing and all that. So how do you see that since you cannot even predict when it is going to end, maybe even when, as you were saying, when 2020 we started talking about a lockdown, primarily we said, okay, China is the one which is worst impacted, probably this kind of a caution. In the next 2 weeks we'll be fine, we'll be going back on the road again. But probably it doesn't happen for last 1 year, or maybe it went into 2 years, right? So where, you were not able to predict the future outcomes. In that situations, so how as a HR leaders will respond or probably prepare yourself to this, unknown events?
Okay, so I'll go first, but just like how you guys might be feeling like, all right, these guys come with industry experience and there is a gap in knowledge, I kind of feel the same sitting with stalwarts like these, because I don't know if you paid attention to the introduction, I'm just 3-year-old baby in HR. I was in business roles, but I will try and answer that. So I think 2020, 2021 was a period of, unplanned reinventions, because nobody had any case study, nobody knew how to deal with that, right? But now 2022, it boils down to the intention. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if you guys were born 2001 when 9/11 happened. You guys were there, or you guys were there? Okay.
I think all
right. Right? So when 9/11 happened, the biggest lesson out of that event for, IT industry especially, and I think for others as well, was the BCPDR. Do you guys know the full form of BCPDR? Business Continuity Planning and Disaster Recovery. Because nobody anticipated that an event like that will happen, but we learned out of it, right? So just like that, when COVID happened, none of us had any rule book, but we figured out our ways. So now I think, irrespective of whatever, because when you can't predict anything, what you can do? You can only try and manage. So just taking an example from my business role, and this is primarily my experience of business and HR. In business, when we manage projects, we have something called a risk log or a risk tracker. But in HR, I have not seen that being used extensively. Maybe some functions use, but when you get into the main corporate, please pay attention. One way to address unprecedented events and how do you tackle that is to maintain a risk log.
Yeah, thank you. I think, you're rightly said. Most of the time, HR departments, they anticipate looking at the employee numbers, right? How many might leave. Rather, we don't look at what type of different challenges that we might face. Probably that was one interesting insight that we, as an HR department, also look at risk assessment, what type of risk might come up. Probably when things are unpredictable, it's even more challenging, right? Yeah, so over to Ms. Apurva.
So for me, again, I'm not wearing the HR hat because there is a separate HR person in my organization. I'm wearing the culture hat and answering the questions. And we actually treat the two functions independent of each other. So culture is not a subset of HR in my organization. I think firstly, just the thought of thriving in ambiguity. You didn't know what the next day was going to look like, but you still had to thrive and you still had to do well because for the work that we do, we are answerable not just to our own people, but we are answerable to the community that we work for, to the clients that we work for, and so on and so forth. So I think one of the biggest things that we sort of knew that we had to thrive in ambiguity. Of course, the initial few months were very tough, whether it was technology support, whether it was the IT infrastructure, whether it was getting people comfortable with the idea of working from home. And I'll tell you some real challenges. For example, there were people who were living in Bombay. Now, Bombay, houses are very small. There are more people living in a smaller house. And, when people had to come for meetings, virtual meetings, they felt very embarrassed to put on their screen because, they had people around them and they felt that it was unprofessional for them to actually come out on screens and many things like that. Or, sometimes the Wi-Fi connectivity wasn't good enough, etc. So in those cases, we helped people with saying that, initially we didn't know, but then as people kept coming back to us to say that this is a problem, how do I solve for it? And, we started looking for solutions, providing data access, providing Wi-Fi support, etc. Second thing that happened was, it is not just HR's problem. I mean, what we went through was a problem that the whole world was going through. So suddenly putting that pressure on the entire HR function to say that HR is going to solve everything is not going to happen. So you had to make it a problem for everyone and you had to look for collective solutions. And I think that's when HR I think most HR people took that higher ground to say that, okay, it is our problem, but we need to collectively work together as a team to help find solutions to that problem. So I think, to me, these are some of the things that happened, at the back of the pandemic.
Yeah, very interesting. So if you look at as what she was saying, even I do agree with that. Most often, if maybe our students are all having 2 to 3 years experience. If you look at the moment any pay decisions or a promotion decisions, they'll always look at an HR as an enemy. That because these guys have made the decisions. It's not actually right. So it comes from several days. But all the time the ownership always felt on an HR. So it's very important to see that how you have taken up the ownership. That yes. But again, what is it? A very interesting thing I observed is that yes, when we see things are unpredictable, where we started to learn from every day and then see how do I respond and take this learning away forward to address the next upcoming challenges, right? Thank you for this interesting insight. Yeah.
So here are 3 things that, as Ahmed and, Apurva was sharing that occurred to me. One was we're having an interesting discussion, so it would be nice if you can bring out a white paper and put it out. So I think there's a lot of value because these are topics that are getting spoken about, and it will be really a good contribution from the institution that can come out of it. Having said that, 3 things that occurred to me and what I sensed. One was, I think it's time for us to exhibit intentionality. HR for very long has been considered as a allied function or as an enabler or as a function in many organizations even called as a support function. Today, I totally disagree. I mean, in my own role, and I speak also for my team of business HR partners, there is no decision that is happening in the organization without the presence of HR. Whether it is about adding another site, another lab, adding capability, capacity, building in the next generation product, our presence is there, and that speaks about intentionality. And all of us who are studying MBA, and since I'm also a product of that science, we study interdisciplinary sciences when we are in those 2-year program. We study finance, we study marketing, we study supply chain, IT, systems, processes, operations. There was a time in a few years back when students of MBA would choose minor and major and deflect their thinking, lack of focus, do not provide enough focus on the other elements of sciences that contribute to organization building. Friends, time has come that interdisciplinary learning, interdisciplinary understanding is here to stay. So therefore, it's very important when you are a leader. You could be a HR leader, you could be, tomorrow the CTO of the company, the CFO of the company. Very important to understand the interconnectedness between each function for you to really deliver what you need to deliver. So the second point is about interdisciplinary behavior. The third point is about agility. Everything is unknown around us. And along with agility, I would also like to add the point of presence of mind. Because you're not going to get solutions that come from your past experiences. You're not going to get solutions that come from your past policies or processes you've created. As a leader, you should be aware that there are changes happening, understand the changes, collaborate with the system. When I say the system, the leaders around the organization, rethink, revitalize, which is one of your themes for the day, and come out with new ways of doing the things. As an example, the past few days we saw a huge debate on moonlighting ever since Wipro announced layoff of 300 people. And then what did Infosys do? They saw a beautiful opportunity here. They actually came out with a policy saying, yes, you can moonlight, provided you just come forward and tell us that you are going to pursue another opportunity, which I thought was a brilliant move by Infosys. Guess what? Their credibility just went up. Their stock prices, if you observed on that day, was one of the highest ranking stock prices, and Wipro's tanked. What does it say of employee mind? Moonlighting will be here, and we'll come to that. I'm sure there's one theme coming around that, and I'll speak about it. But that's the agility and presence of mind. You know, surveying the ecosystem and trying to do what you can do to protect A, your business, B, the people who run your business. I think these are the couple of points.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, what is very interesting to look at is, we're talking about intentionality, where now I think most of the organizations started to accept what you're putting forth as that HR functions is no more a support functions. They're absolutely one of the important strategic functions of an organizations. And talking about this agility, that's very interesting and a very important aspect for, especially for going to be a business leaders or a future managers, that agility is very, very important aspect that you should keep changing and observing how does your environment actually gives you or behaves. That will give you a lot of sense of creating an awareness, and as you were saying about awareness about a change, and change is of course a constant one. How are you going to take things away, and then what are the ways in which you're going to respond in a new way of responding? You cannot always look for the existing data to respond to the future, because if the future is absolutely unknown and if it's new, that in a previous data may not help you to respond well. So thank you for these insights.
I totally agree that being agile is something very important as a progressive leader. What is another very important thing is how fast you can adapt to the culture, adapt to the changes in this VUCA world. Now, when we talk about what are the changes which is happening all across, with less you are doing more, and this is a new syndrome altogether. How can you eliminate and chase waste? Now, this pandemic created a sea and plethora of opportunities for a lot of things which were not being seen as a value additions. In my organization, we started downsizing our workforce. That was one part of it, but we also started looking into something that can we reduce the salary so that we can continue with our same headcount. Now, that was something very challenging. When you go and talk to an employee and say that, hey, I'm going to reduce your salary for 20%, the guy is going to fume like anything, because there is so much of anxiety in the system, in the entire organization, as well as in the entire world. The first thing was, is my job safe? And then the second thing is that, are you going to reduce it 20%? Is it going to further go less, or 30% or 40%? Now, this is a very tricky situation for people managers. You need to continue to motivate, make them to work and perform at an optimum level with less resources, and then also reducing the salaries. So that was something very, very important which we have faced. And I'm sure that this is not going to end over here. COVID is here. Might be after some time there will be something else. What is very important, end of the day, is how fast you can adapt to the systems and the changes.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That how fast we can adapt. We talk about an agility as a company and as an organizations. How agile are we? But how fast are we in adapting to the certain changes, right? And as you was talking about this downsizing and the other side of reducing this salaries, it's always a very complex situations where very difficult. You are being empathetic towards employees who are going to be chucked out of the company, but other side employees are concerned about, you don't talk about my salary reductions. I'm concerned about it. I want to be protective about it. I'm looking at how much of increment you're going to give me, but you're talking about reducing my salary. So yeah, so that's again, of course, every time organizations are posed with certain challenges. If you look at the last 2 years, I think most of the industry had, maybe certain industry were flourishing, and their hiring was multifolded, whereas certain industry has impacted so badly that they have to go for a larger level of layoff, and that's impacted so badly. Of course, though, layoff also has financial implication for a company as well. I need to give them the full and final settlement. It's going to be a big package as well. So, but it was always a challenge for a company. Look at, okay, what is my sustainability? How do I see my business for next few years to make sure that I can at least take my present employees with me? So that is actually creating more complexity and challenges in a workplace. So now I wanted to take this forward. Since we're talking about certain changes that we are proposing, so now I'm going to talk about this where, from an employee perspective, or maybe as a team or a group, as we said, virtual workplaces are probably hybrid now, where now companies have come up with the new ways of handling things, introduced certain models. Now, how these employees, we always see the moment we introducing newer models, we always find that there's a level of resistance and reluctance to accept or embrace those kind of a new models. So how you, maybe as a HR leader or probably as a person who was holding an important position in an organization, how do you want to create a kind of an environment or probably a culture that my employees are looking at positively? The moment we are talking about new models, the first comes, change model always says, people resist, even before thinking about what this model is about. So how do you see this, and how do you want to create kind of an environment or maybe a development mindset among your employees to at least pay attention to this model and embrace these models? So what would you do?
This is very tricky. Many organizations, if you are in the IT sector, hybrid model or working from home is an acceptable fact, and people are quite very happy while doing so. But if you come to the other side of the coin is manufacturing, you cannot afford to have a hybrid model there, whereas 40% of your employees is sitting at home and 60% are working. So that balancing factor is something very important. As far as Akshay Patra is concerned, we cannot afford to have a hybrid model or a model whereas you can stay at home and work. We have a duty and a passionate duty to make sure that we are able to feed 20 lakh kids every day basis. So for us, we have two set of people. One, those who are working in the kitchens, and one, those who are working in our corporate office or in the regional offices. And they keep coming back and forth to us saying that, why don't you allow us to work from home? I can work from anywhere because I'm in the corporate office. But then we need to see on the larger perspective, the guys, those who are slogging themselves in the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure that the lunch or the food is, or the meal is ready by 7:30 in the morning. I cannot do that. But we do have some of the processes like the marketing side, those who internet marketing, we do give them some kind of liberty that you can work for 15, 20 days from your home. But ultimately, what binds us together is in the office atmosphere. And to give you a fact, all of you guys, I was talking to some of you, guys just started working or studying online sessions, but you were all very passionate to come to this campus. Am I right? So what was the important factor is work along and have that atmosphere in the team. That adds a huge value. You working at home, maybe with your competence you can only reach to a level, but once you start interacting with many people, your confidence level, your performance level multi-folds, and that adds a huge value.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would like to ask you one more question, since it's very interesting, because we look at I think most large number of employees are working in a technology-based organization. They were thinking about hybrid, discussing about whether I should permanently go or permanently remote work. But as he was talking about, there are social sectors where you cannot even think of a remote or a hybrid. And what I wanted to ask you a question is that probably as you were talking about a corporate people, maybe those employees who had their peers or maybe friends coming from a different industries, they had kind of a social pressure that why should I not enjoy being, how did you handle that situation?
Luckily, we have a set of almost 10,000 employees, and they are quite very passionate about it. There was a remote village in UP, and I was visiting Lucknow, which is one of our largest kitchens. And I got a chance to recognize one of my employees who got royally beaten by the police. Because whoever was coming outside of their houses, the police, irrespective of whether you are in a social sector or you are working for Akshay Patra, the first thing was they started danda maro usko. And after getting a lot of bruise, the employee was still saying that nothing doing, I have to go to my kitchen first. Because the the employees, those who were migrating from Mumbai or various other metropolitan cities, they had to be fed. And it was not at all in our strategy, it was not at all in our plans. Our plan has been, or our strategy has been that no child should be hungry because of, or deprived because of studies. And that was something very important. So we shifted it was a complete transformation. Feeding to the kids, now feeding to the migrant employees. And we were feeding almost 50 million people all together across India, length and breadth.
Okay, great, yeah. So probably what I see is that, you started with the values. Probably you created the values among your employees. That has actually stayed. Thank you, yeah. So over to you.
I'm just consumed by Akshay Patra, but repeat your question again.
Okay, so my question is about, where we're talking about, we are introducing new models, and how do you see that, because we see that there is reluctance and resistance from employees. So how do you going to create an environment, or maybe create a mindset among employees to proactively accept or maybe prepare themselves for those new models?
I think, the way I would put it is, so almost I believe so all of you came with prior work experience, am I right? And all those emotions are still raw probably in your mind, which is why you're here. It's time for human as a resource to change as human as a possibility. When you consider a person as just a resource, you're creating a boundary there. This is all you need to do. This is your role. This is the time you come. This is the time you work. This is the time you go home. These are the people whom you would interact with. Am I right? There is a restricted boundary. The moment you now look at as a human being as a possibility, you are just making it as a boundaryless area for him or her to perform. Am I right? So that is exactly, I think, what leaders need to do today. Now, how do you do? Probably what I'm saying here feels esoteric and feels very theoretic, but let me try and simplify what are some of the things we are trying to do at Lennox. The first thing is, as HR, it is near impossible for me to touch the minds and hearts of all the employees that are there in my circle of influence, right? It's not even possible by my team, because HR never is gifted a large team, right? We're a thin, lean organization. So you really need an organization tree that carries your value system across the organization. And who are those nodes? Who are those branches? It is the leaders. It is the managers. At the unit level, at the sub-unit level, it is them. So a couple of things that we at Lennox have done quite well, because I can proudly claim we have an attrition that's averaging around 10% in an industry that's averaging attrition around 23–30%, right? So I do take credit on behalf of all my leaders. One is making leaders as coaches. Now, what does that mean? Very often when you become a leader, you come into that space with a sense of entitlement, power, authority. And the tendency, therefore, as a leader is to tell, direct, and ask the team what they need to do, how they need to perform, how much do they need to perform, when and why, right? What we have made an attempt at Lennox is to turn leaders into coaches and enable to ask people, not ask them, ask them. How can you do this? By when can you do? Are there other possibilities of doing it? Self-reflect this on yourself. If you had a leader around you who asks you how empowering it is. So therefore you're taking away the resource element of the person and opening doors to possibilities, right? The second thing that we as a team have done is invest in our leaders heavily on understanding people. Understanding people doesn't mean doing project reviews with them. I know a lot of managers, even in our organization, who would do one-on-ones, right? Or I'm sure all of you know of it. Or staff meetings, or town hall meetings. It's a checklist. I have 10 PowerPoint slides. I'm telling you whatever I have gathered, I'm sharing. There's no opportunity for the other person to really reveal what he or she really wants. So we are twisting that game. In fact, we are slowly experimenting, taking out town halls from PowerPoint-based town halls to chat conversations. You ask us questions, and then we will answer that. We are experimenting with it. I don't say we are experts, but it's working well because it's opening doors to conversations. Let me go into a little more basics here, if you can allow me a couple of minutes, right? All of us as human beings, we have the supreme computer, supercomputer called as the brain, right? It's got two parts to it. There's an upper brain with which all of you are right now sitting here in this room, absorbing, focus, listening, creativity, innovation. You probably are preparing questions for us. It's all the upper brain activity. Then there is the limbic part of our brain, which is also called as a reptilian brain, which is nothing but the basic survival mechanisms: flight, fight, survival, freeze. That's what happens. So connect back to my earlier statement. When you have leaders who tell you what to do, tell you how to do, tell you when to do, what they are really activating is the lower part of the brain, right? It's about security. Let me save myself, so I will do it for him. I just need to protect my job. I just need to feel secure. It's with that mindset we get into those roles. But the moment the manager or the leader turns the table and asks, how can this be done? What else can be done? Do you have more ideas? They are activating the upper part of the brain, which is a supercomputer, which is very liberating, very empowering. And I think that is what we need today in organizations, and that is what engages. I see several nods around the room. I did it with intent that I was looking around the room. You all agree with me that that is what is the requirement in today's organizations, and we need to turn leaders as coaches within the organizations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I just want to add, and because when you were talking about the brain, my psychology studies, suddenly I woke up and my brain became active. So just to simplify, there are 3 types of, brains or whatever. The amygdala, as she spoke about, is the reptilian brain, which keeps you alive. Right now, you're breathing and all that. It's because of that part of the brain. The limbic system, as she spoke about, is the emotional brain, where most of our decisions we take because of that, and that keeps us safe. Right? The third is the prefrontal cortex, which is right here, which matures only at the age of 25. If any of you here is less than 25, you still have time, my friend. And that keeps you smart. So if you want to remember, this is how you can remember.
Yeah, thank you. So what I see, I also relate with, we talked about a resource, do not look at them as a resource, as a possibility. I think I connect back to some of the lectures of, Sadhguru, where he also talks about, look at it as a possibility. Every human being and a mind has enormous possibility. The possibility gives you more scope than you thinking it as a resource, right? Yeah, and very interesting point is that, don't look at as a leader, do not create leaders, rather you develop coaches. I think that's an interesting insight where maybe the future leaders has to keep them in mind and save it for future, that keep thinking as a coaches. Do not see you as a leader. Means leader will dictate terms. Rather you look at as a coach, that you allow them to experiment and make them understand what they are good at, and which actually that will help them to embrace the model so quickly. And also, as you were talking about understanding people, so allowing leaders to understand people. And I think most important aspect is understanding people is much more important skill for a leader than understanding the process and systems what they really have. So thank you for these insights. Yeah.
So a couple of quick ones I'll tell you. So, and I think some of it got covered. For us, embracing anything new, you can't just, and it typically happens in organizations, that it needs to happen in a certain constructed way. So we had actually got into the habit of frequent and consistent communication with our teams through town halls and not through emails, So no change or no big shift that was going to happen would just go on email and expect for people to embrace that new model or new ways of working, etc. But we would talk to people, and we would also articulate for people why are we doing it, what's in it for them, and also what are the potential challenges and how will we collectively overcome those challenges, right? So I think that consistent and frequent communication was one of the things we were very clear, whether it was around business, whether it was around people, whether it was around policies. Second was also helping, when you embrace something new, first embracing happens at the level of mindset, and then the skills have to be worked on, right? And both need to go hand in hand. And I think, again, during these last two years, we realized, operating with empathy, kindness, compassion was so important. And then, of course, training and the skill building and all that would happen, as a follow-up. Third was, redefining of work and the workspaces. We had invested in 2 large campuses in Delhi and Bombay, which could potentially house, 4,000 people. Lot of capex spent, lot of money invested, very state-of-the-art campus. But obviously that had to shut down for those 2 years. So when we came back into a hybrid mode. Even today we operate in a hybrid mode where people are expected to come to work 3 days as opposed to 2 days. That's a shift that's happening slowly and gradually from not coming any day to then 1 day to 2 days, and now 3 days. Hopefully by Jan 1st, we want to make it all 5 days in office, as we move forward. But I think we've helped redefine work and workspaces. For example, today when you look at work, there is some work that I can actually, what we call the focused work, where I don't need to be around people, and that I can operate from home and do it from home. And then there's certain works that need for me to be around people, have conversations, brainstorm, etc. And therefore, the workspaces also need to be redefined. What used to be a very closed silo, cabins and open workstation places, today we are a fully open office. It's an agile office. Anybody can sit anywhere, and all you need to do is you need to let people know in advance, your admin teams, the day you're going to come into the office, to ensure that there is a seat available for you. So the whole workspace concept has been redefined. And which is a big shift for many people who are used to sitting in cabins and wouldn't sit with people outside. And for all of us, it's been a pleasant and a welcome change. And I think the last thing that has happened is, we have loosely used terms voluntary and flexibility in the 2 years of pandemic. I think we have now moved to a place where we have very clearly defined that we are in a space of flexibility. There is no more voluntary work. So you have to, flexibility means that there are certain policies and guidelines that have been predefined. Within that, there is flexibility to operate, but it's not an open box situation where people can decide when to come and when not to come, and things like that. So I think those are some of the things that we've done in our organization.
Yeah, I think, very important when you talk about, any model or a new change, that, frequent communication, keeping them along with me, that get their buy-in. So only that can happen through a communication. Maybe I have another interesting question, because maybe in academicians we read a lot of research articles. So when we talk about redefining the workspace, what I've recently read an article where they were talking about, how do you enhance a relationship? So the companies were said, move to an open office spaces, and the research happened to be giving a very interesting result, which they said, cubicle setups that had a very strong relationship than an open office space. Probably, I want to hear from an industry people, how do you look at it? Because we're talking about an open workspace where now you're giving to an extent that you pick up every day one spot to sit and work. And how do you look at creating a kind of a relationship with our employees?
So if I may answer that question, because we've just gone into that space. So it's not fully open. It's a hybrid. Workspace is also hybrid. There are closed spaces and there are open spaces. Depending on the nature of meetings and work that needs to happen, you can choose to be in a 2-seater, 10-seater, 15-seater. And otherwise, there are obviously these open workstations. We've also said that, what is the workspace meant for? It is meant for developing relationships. It's meant for celebrating the key moments that matter for employees in the organization. It is meant for showcasing some of the fantastic work that people have done to the larger organization. And for all these things, you need larger spaces where people can come and be together. For example, the last 1 month, I have seen the campus buzzing thanks to Dussehra and Diwali. We've done so much of activities in office, from, we've got the NGOs to come and do a sort of a flea market for us, where we invited all our organizations to come and participate. Yesterday, the students that I was interacting with were telling me about the big festival that you have on Deepavali, which is the competition, the illumination competition, right? We had the Rangoli competition on our campus for the first time, again, which meant people had to come together and do things. So I think there is nothing which is fully open as a workspace. There is always going to be a combination of open and closed workspaces. But I do think that, traditionally we were not used to sitting in open spaces as leaders. I think that paradigm shift has happened. I can tell you that today I enjoy sitting out in the open as opposed to sitting in a cabin, because it just helps you to interact and meet people far more easily. Otherwise, every time you have to take an appointment, you have to fix a meeting, etc. Today, anybody can come and meet anyone as long as you're free and available to meet.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Maybe, especially from a cultural perspective, maybe the power distance, where as a country our power distance are high, maybe the open spaces might bring down this power distance. Yeah. Yes.
So, I'll be very careful, because I'm sitting next to the chief culture officer, and I'm going to answer anything on culture, and I have to share the ride with her back to Kolkata. And I will answer both your questions, so that the next question can go in that order, and you can skip me. So the first question was on the models that we have, right? And what can we do where people kind of embrace it? So let me ask you, how many of you here have a Nike shoes that does not have a lace? Just one. Okay, so I don't know if you know about this story of Nike, but they came up with a shoe which does not have a lace, primarily for people suffering with cerebral palsy. But the adoption of that was primarily by women and children. They all loved it, right? So when you look at models, now let's come to the corporate world, and you are the future HR leader, and somebody comes and tells you like, you know what, we need to come up with a well-being model. Let's talk about that. So what I'm trying to say is, like Nike, when you try and solve for one, maybe there are others who will benefit. But how do you ensure that those people who will benefit actually see the benefit? Is there is a maturity model for everything. So for well-being, the first is, are you doing it only for compliance? Because everybody else is doing, and you will be questioned, are you doing it for that? Or are you doing it because you want to increase the productivity? Or are you doing it for the brand purpose? Or are you doing it for high performance so that the competition kind of you grab that? Or are you doing it for purpose? Now the employees that you will deal with will be able to resonate to each one of them differently. So in your interactions, you have to personalize it and show that cause and attach it. So that is on the first question. Now coming to the work part, right? This pandemic, actually, we scratched our head and tried to figure out, okay, what is it that we can do? So there is this very good model that I read in Gartner's report, where it says every organization, now you come into the main corporate world, you will be asked like, okay, how are you going to manage people? So always remember where your employees are working. Are they co-located or distributed? Or are they, and how they are working, like asynchronous or synchronous? Let me take an example. All of us here sitting here probably are a part of one project. So we are working together and we are together. So in a scenario like that, you need to have collaboration and you need to design your office in that manner. The second, now Ankita Singh, who couldn't join us, just imagine if she was on a video conference. So we are together here, but she is apart. But we are all working for the same conclave, right? There you have to think about the tools that you're going to use to enable that smooth interaction. Then you have few people working alone, but together. Like somebody who is not in this is somewhere else. But you have to bring them into the ecosystem, right? So you got to develop networking opportunities for them. Then you have somebody who is working apart and alone. Then you bring in the well-being stuff. So for different strokes and different folks, that is what comes into picture here.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting to look at how do you collaborate. Looking at it is a case that an organization will have all different types of employees who distributed, probably stay in the same office space, and of course remotely connected as well. So maybe two of you wanted to comment on that question which I have asked about the workspace.
Sir, on the workspace, I think it's time to put Frederick Taylor, finally rest him to complete peace, right? Because he's the one who started this whole concept of mass manufacturing and people coming in on a certain time, time clock, people working for a certain time. Let's respect him and rest him to peace completely, because he's never going to rise up from there, right? Just look at what happened here, over the last 1 hour as we were talking. Some of you were very heavily engaged. Some of you felt certain portions were not very engaging. You decided to take a break, come back in. Some never came back in. Now, this is the reality even in workplace, right? I'm sure every morning you're not waking up like this eagle-eyed beaver bee saying, oh, today is going to be a fantastic day, I'm going to rock it. Do you feel like that every day? How many of you feel like that every day?
So at least as a faculty, we do.
There are certain days I don't feel like it. One is Mondays mornings and Friday evenings, right? And that's human beings. That's the engagement drivers we all have, because guess what? Work is only one part of our life, right? Just underline that. Work is just one part of your life. There was a time, pre-pandemic, when we thought work was everything. Family, friends, community, gardens, pets all came whenever we had the time. I think pandemic taught us a great lesson as to how work is just one element, But I really care for my hobby, I care for that garden, I care for that pet, I care for my family, I care for my children, and I care for my fitness, right? The whole ecosystem has changed in our mind. The wiring itself has changed. When the wiring changes for 2 years, and then you have this established top leadership telling, okay, now it's time to come back to work. Obviously, we are activating your amygdala, right? Saying, why? Everything is working perfectly. Why are they even calling us? That's exactly what we are all experiencing. So therefore, I think the need, and it's here to stay, is flexibility at work. We are going to see more and more flexibility. There is no amount of efforts that leaders can take which will pull back people completely to work. People need flexibility. They are not saying we will not come to work. I have not yet met one employee who comes and tells me, I do not want to come to work. All they're saying is give us flexibility. All they're saying is give us our timelines when we want to work. And I'll give you an interesting example which happened very recently. We are interviewing for a role which is supposed to be done for the US team. And this person who was getting interviewed, in her current organization, she has a certain start time and an end time, right? So it's very natural for her, when she was being interviewed, she asked the question, what timings are you looking for? And the answer that she received, I knew baffled her because I was sitting and observing that interview. The answer was, you can work at any time you want, as long as work gets done. I saw her body language shift. I saw her shoulders settle down. And I saw a smile. And I knew I had a winner in my hand. I knew there was a person who will join me. And then after the interview, she called me and she said, what he said, did he mean it? Look at the distrust. What he said, did he actually mean it? And I said, he actually meant it. You can work at any time. And then she took a decision to work on an odd timing because she felt working in that timing will give her more access to engage with that team abroad. It was totally her decision. It was not a decision that we imposed on her as an organization. So I think that is what people like. Many of you are not even married, but when you are and when you have those children, they're not going to listen to you. I can bet you and I can challenge you, right? Because they are far more superior intelligent beings, far more rationally provoked beings that will come to you. And they're not waiting to you to give them dictates or diktats saying do this and do that. They're going to have their own free will, and that's the workforce that we are experiencing. So I'm saying flexibility is here to stay. Okay. Open spaces are here to stay. People don't like hierarchies. That's very clear. People want people to be feeling as one. So these two are things for here to stay.
Great. I think Mr. Ahmed wants to add.
Every time Hema brings up brain, wiring and all, I get an itch to share something about the brain.
So your brain gets activated.
It gets activated and I kind of recall whatever is deep down there in my long-term memory. So neurons, right? So our brain is made up of neurons. So in the psychological world or the neuroscience world, they say neurons that fire together are wired together, which means you have some bit of information and a corresponding stuff comes and it gets thickened, right? And neurons, the ones that you don't use, you will lose. So I'm sure now if I ask you a formula from trigonometry from your 12th, you will not, right? So that is how when we deal with employees, the more you are feeding them at appropriate intervals, you will win over them.
Yeah, I think I do agree with what you were saying. Work is only one part of your life. And what I've seen interestingly, we were reading recent articles. I think one of the employees was saying, I really enjoyed being remotely connected to my work because he was talking about I never know what my kid used to do, and I now know what type of homework he or she does. And they say, I really enjoy helping my kid. So looking at the change that people started to reflect on during that last 2 years, that reflection actually come into a stage where organization has to consider the reflection of an employees, where, okay, so employees are feeling that, I have something more than not just, contribute towards my work, because I look at my responsibilities much more, because I've given a lot of responsibility on my spouse that she has looking after everything. Now I started to realize what time my maid comes in, what time she goes out, what my kids does. So I know employees have started to reflect and then see that, can I still get that opportunity of knowing this still being in an organization setup. So I think that flexibility is going to be a important response and an answer to the challenges we are speaking about. Yeah, so do you want to add something about this workspace?
I do agree. The paradigm shift which is happening and the new, the millennials who are entering into the marketplace, what is very important is the flexibility. Now, gone are those days that people like us, that how much ever I dig, that much of water it will come. Gone are those days. These kids, their parents would be very well settled. So they are just not working only because of money. They are working to explore, learn, and also to continue with their passions and the hobbies what they are having. So the more and more flexibility you give to these set of people, the chances and the opportunities are immense. They will be able to innovate more. If there was a saying that if you are in a shell, and if you don't break, you still you continue to be as a nut. So you need to come out of that shells and start exploring various kind of possibilities.
Yeah, I think I agree, and then I also want to add on what Ms. Apu was talking about, the flexibility. But again, how flexible I can give. I wanted a certain framework because I operate as an organization. I cannot give you a absolute flexibility, but I wanted to make sure that yes, you have a flexibility, but there is a framework in which I want you to operate on. So probably now adding on to this conversation what you've been having, so I want to build on the next question around the same thing. So since we are talking about challenges, or probably you're talking about a flexibility, or maybe some industry hybrid is working and somewhere may not be possible. But what we have seen that almost everybody would agree that what type of an organization you are in, or probably what type of an industry you operate, we do agree things have changed, work has changed. Given this change, and employees are started to accept or probably view this is how my work is going to be. That is the biggest challenge that most industry stalwarts or leaders are seeing it now, because 2 years is a sufficient time to feel that it is going to be the same. Now, organizations are contemplating on how do I bring them back, because I want to create for various reasons. Where now you look at TCS is saying that I kind of enforcing 3 days in my office, and what we have seen in the recent maybe news articles that many employees were giving medical reports to asking for a work from home, and they set up a board to see. So my medical board will examine and see the request. So now looking at this kind of a challenges, right? What type of a leadership challenges you will face that when the kind of a workplace or maybe the expectations of how my work should be has changed, right? What do you see as a greater leadership challenges that you would see? Maybe look at from an HR perspective or from a generic perspective.
The leadership challenges what I foresee is now getting into not a 9 to 5 kind of job that a person is sitting in the office. What matters is results. You work, in my previous role when I was working for Caterpillar, I had my direct reports in Americas and Australias and in Asia. And I cannot monitor them come what it may. What was important is developing that trust factor. And once you are able to develop that trust factor, the another thing was driving results. I don't care you work from a Kabban Park, or you work from a railway station, or you work from your bedroom, or you work from the office. What matters is, are you able to give me results? And if that is happening, and the new generation, even the current workforce or the leadership team are becoming more and more flexible with our set of people with whom we are working. The flexibility is, we keep talking about flexibility. You can come at 10 o'clock, you come late, you can go early, as long as the work is not getting hampered. Management by objective is something which is buzzing all around now.
Okay, yeah. So thank you. I think the challenge you're talking about. Yes, you talked about the results, right? Though we are driving towards results, as you pointed about a trust. So do you also see that building a trust has also certain amount of challenges? Because every employees are looking at differently, right?
It is. If you really look at who are the leaders today, right? They all come in from a generation, either they're baby boomers or generation next, right? And what was the driving factor for those set of people to be working? It was primarily to bring money home, to put food on the table. That's the generation I come from. When I started working right after my MBA program, it was not a fanciful decision. I had paid heavy loans to do my program, and it was important to bring the money home, and that's about it. And then there was families. But as he rightly pointed out, these leaders who are baby boomers and Generation X are managing an entirely different generation, which is the millennials, the Gen X, and my daughter called it something else, the woke generation. That's what she called it. She's part of the woke generation, by the way. And their identities, their belief system, their aspirations are entirely in contrast with the leaders. And that in itself is a very classic contrast. Therefore, the challenge is in really breaking that contrast and having a meeting ground, right? As much as I always feel that I'm very close to the millennials, which I try to be because I have my son's friends literally parked in my house every other day. But I know that there is a gap that I have with them. There are certain philosophies, there are certain value systems I just don't agree with. And that's just been me. I don't want to be a false me, but that's just been me. So that is the biggest challenge. How do we cut that across? How do we arrive at that meeting ground where both of us can survive, both of us can exist, and both of us can like each other? I think that's the biggest.
I think, I might want to add up another question to you, because since you rightly said, there you see leaders and we're looking at the different generations working in an organization setup. So we do accept and being aware that this is a critical challenge. So now how do you see that you can address this challenge? What do you do about these challenges?
I think it's about learning for both. We have this beautiful initiative. In fact, Rahul is here and he's part of it. We have a program called Reverse Mentoring. So where we have young millennials, who are born after the 1990s, yeah, they are mentors to the leaders who are probably born in the 1970s. And when we started off, it was very uncomfortable. I remember my colleagues coming and telling me, this is not making me comfortable. I don't know how. In many cases, what happened was, the mentee here is supposed to be me, okay, for an example, and the mentor is supposed to be Rahul. But the tendency is, I make Rahul the mentee at the end of every conversation. So that was how it initially started, and we had to continuously, so that worked a little. Two, we do some fun kind of things. We have what is called as Lennox Young Professionals Forum, which is completely managed, run by the next generation leaders, as we would like to call them. They run the club, they form the programs of the club, they invite us, and they have some very interesting conversations, which are eye-openers for us. So there's a lot of cross-learning that is happening, and that I think organizations need to indulge more of that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for this insight.
We call it as employee resource group.
Okay.
So the set of new guys, you take a lead, and we will all follow you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so over to Ms. Apu on your.
So I'll tell you, for us, I think the challenge for a leader is the function of the people that you work with, right? And our workforce average age is about 28 to 30 people. So of the 11,000 people, almost 60 to 65% people fall in the age group of 28, 29, 30. What we've also seen as a recent phenomenon in the last, and especially after the 2 years, is that today the workforce that's coming to the organization is not just coming for the job role and the money, but they're also looking for purpose and passion and the value system that the organization has to offer. And I think that is an area that we've done a lot of work on in the last 2 years, where we've actually created avenues, employee resource groups, like Mukeshji said, which allows for people to pursue a passion outside of their day's job, which means that we've created an infrastructure where literally 10 to 15% of your time you can give into pursuing passion. The areas currently that, for example, we look, which we know are very sort of relevant to the current world situation, we look at sustainability as an area. How do we work as a company where, for the campuses, for example, how do we minimize waste? How do we optimize the waste that's getting generated into something which is of value, and educate people on the kind of waste disposal, etc. It may sound very sort of petty, but for people it means a lot, because a lot of young people today who are actually focused on this whole waste to value proposition. We also work with our own foundation, which is the WPP Foundation, which works with 20,000 kids who come from economically backward backgrounds in urban cities to help them acquire life skills so that they can become employable. What that means is that we typically take these kids after the 9th standard, because in our country, as we know, the maximum dropout in government schools happens at the 8th and the 9th standard, which is when we reach out to them and we actually work in imparting different types of 28 life skills, you know, from music to robotics to medical to engineering and the works. So that's the other area where people get a chance to work. And then, of course, we work on the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda. So we've got women as a focus area. We've got the LGBTQI community as a focus area. And 23, we will start working with people with disability. The reason, and you know why I say that this is the challenge, because if we didn't have all this, it was very difficult to retain people in the organization, because all that would keep people there for was the job role and the money, and then wherever you get the next best, you make the shift. But today, because employees feel belonged, they feel engaged, they also feel, and especially for those who come from the minority groups, feel that, you know, there is a safe space for them to be able to come and talk to allies. I think we've been able to create a fairly we've been able to sort of deal with a challenge that potentially could have led to massive exodus for us as a company.
Yeah, I think, you know, I do agree now the current workforce also look for a lot of values in an organization, that, you know, looking at, you know, giving them opportunity for, you know, or at least show them as a socially responsible company where they connect, their values matches that I want to stay with the company. Of course, that's also a challenge that when you're talking about varied, kind of categories of employees coming in and their expectations are different. Yeah, so over to Mr. Ahmed.
So before I answer that question, I want to wake you up. The reason why I'm saying is because your prefrontal cortex or your attention span is like, you know, and for the last 1 hour, all these oldies are kind of just going on and on and on. Right? So just ask a question to yourself. What are you feeling at this point in time? You don't have to answer it to me, just to yourself. What are you feeling at this point in time? What is that feeling that comes to your mind? Okay, I think you have. Now your prefrontal cortex is reset. Now I'll give you the answer to the leadership stuff. You know, the trend, or by the time you will come to the corporate world, whatever you have learned here, I don't know, the different leadership styles, you know, majority is like the executive leadership, or the democratic leadership, or the, you know, servant leadership, all these concepts. There is a new thing which is coming about, and COVID actually introduced it, which is called enterprise leadership. So what I mean by that is you don't draw circles around your span. I think you guys, when you were working in your previous companies, you might have heard that break the silos, right? But what exactly we mean by breaking the silos? So a couple of weeks back, I was in Hyderabad attending a learning and development summit, and I was invited as a speaker, and I chose a title, Win for All. Because most often you will hear win-win solution. Okay, what is a win-win? No, it's win-win, it's only 2 people involved. It has to be win for all. So taking an example of learning and development, you have your client, you have the business guys, you have your employees, you have your vendors, right? And then the other support functions that will help you in imparting that training. So what happened in COVID? If every leader said that, okay, this is my boundary, I'm not going to do anything beyond this, there is no way, in Capgemini at least, 1 lakh employees were able to work overnight from home. Because that was a collaboration between HR, IT, admin, all functions together. So the key thing is collaboration. So enterprise management with collaboration.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for insight. Probably we are coming towards the end of our panel discussion. I wanted to have this, of course, everybody talking about moonlighting. As she said, she reserved her views for this question. Okay, so I wanted to bring in 2 questions. Probably we'll take up these first questions. I want to hear from your views as well as from your company perspective. So how do you see this moonlighting? Because now it becomes a bigger debate where employees have a difference. I think I would say that there is a mixed response from employees as well. Somebody supports, somebody disagree with this practice. So I want to hear from 2 sides. One is about your views on moonlighting being as an employee and looking at from a leader as well. So how do you see this?
Okay, so first of all, when do you sight a moon? Usually, most of the time, when do you sight a moon? in the night, right? So moonlighting as a concept is you do your day job, and in the night, whenever you find time, you can do something else. But is that a possibility now? No, because no company would say that, okay, you work in the day for X and in the night work for me, right? So that's from a concept point of view. My personal view as an employee might be a little skewed because I am at a stage in my career where I kind of pay focus to something else. Monetary stuff is not important at this time, whereas for a, a kid who's starting, probably they want to earn quick. Peer pressure, this guy has, or this girl has an iPhone, latest model I want to buy, or I invested in a house, I need to pay EMI and all those things. But I feel is, besides the contract that you sign with an employer, if the contract says that you should not be taking anything which has a conflict of interest, I agree with Wipro that it is cheating. That is one. Second is you are billed to the client per hour basis. If it's a time and material project, 9 hours you clock and 9 hours the client is paying for you. So if you take out time and do something else within those 9 hours, again it's cheating. So that's my view on moonlighting.
So thank you. I think go to other panel members as well, so you can give your views.
So actually not much different from Sajjad, I mean, in an industry, because of the pandemic, a lot of people lost jobs, the pay cuts happened and all of that. So I think people still needed the financial stability. They needed to pay off their debts, all those things. And therefore, moonlighting became a concept which started being spoken of. Not that it didn't exist earlier. People were still doing multiple jobs. From an organization, so, so my personal view is it is something ethically shouldn't be done because it's a wrong thing. Because a lot of times what you're doing is at the cost of the work or the employer that you work with. But at the same time, if it's being done in the night and things like that, then it's okay. But like overworked, and that has a ramification on the existing work. From an organization's perspective, it could lead to, for example, breach of trust and confidentiality. I'll just give you a simple reason. When we put an appointment letter to an employee, there is a clear sort of a paragraph which talks about that you can't be doing any other work for monetary reasons outside of the work that you're employed for. So somewhere there is also this whole breach of confidentiality. Sometimes it could also lead to conflict of interest, right? Because if you're working in a similar industry and doing work for the day you're doing in an organization where you're employed, but you're actually doing something else in the evening, but there is a potential conflict of interest, and again, that's something we wouldn't encourage. So I'm more sort of not very excited about moonlighting as a concept, but I do think that I've seen a lot of the creative folks in my company doing moonlighting as a way of working because it allows them a lot of flexibility, and it also helps them to fulfill their passion, which otherwise may not get fulfilled through the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
I forgot one point, and I think Hema covered it. So in our organization, we have an application called Declare. So we understand that your personal circumstances can be different. So you go ahead and declare that, okay, this is a side activity I'm going to pick up. And our ethical officer will look at it and will come back to you saying that, yeah, it's absolutely fine, go ahead. So we have given that flexibility.
Okay, yeah, so thank you for that. I think, when we're talking about moonlighting as a thing, we were always, even as an employee, always reflect about, do I really get into a conflict of interest, or probably am I being ethical to, or maybe am I, being true to what the agreement I signed for. So it's again, as I see that even employees also have conflicting thoughts about moonlighting. Probably, as you said, because of the situations are looking at the financial stability or probably pursuing their interest that has actually come up. Yeah, so your views on
I might become unpopular among my panelists, but I have a different view of it. Moonlighting has always existed. Agree? We all went to schools where we had teachers, and then in the evening we went to the same teachers to take tuitions. Right? We all have families who became doctors. Daytime they would spend consulting in a hospital. Evening they would have their boutique clinic outside. Moonlighting always existed, right? You have people who write, who are editing out newspapers or journals, and they would possibly be writing a book. Who knows, there may be some authors here in this room. That's moonlighting. So basically something which you're doing in addition to your normal job. That's how I would define it. And something that you would do beyond normal working hours. Now, as a HR leader, do I support it? My answer is yes and no. My answer is yes, because it provokes a certain creativity in that human being. I'm liberating that person to pursue a certain passion of his or hers, which is completely all right. I don't own the individual. When I sign, and remember in India we sign free will contracts. Unlike in European countries or in China, where I sign a contract for a certain fixed term. In India, our contracts are free will contracts, which means I don't own the individual. I don't own the individual 24/7. I own the individual for a certain skill, for a certain number of hours in a day or in a week, right? Having said that, the rest of the day is open for them. And there is no way, there is no legal system in India which is against this notion that all of us as employees, when we sign those contracts called as offer letters, it is a free will contract. It is a unbinded contract that we sign, unless they put a little monetary restriction over it. So that's on the legality side of it. So I also say no to moonlighting. It has to be done in a respectful way, which is why I appreciate companies like Capgemini or Infosys, what they have done, where they're saying just come forward and declare so that we know whom you're working with, what you're doing. I'll actually share an incident which happened pre-pandemic, right? All of you remember the Chandrayaan, the program, the initiative? Do you know months later there was one individual who found the debris of that of that Mars rover on the moon? Do you all remember that? There was one person. I'm happy to share that one person is my colleague at Lennox India. We knew that he was doing that work because every time we walked by, he had these two monitors. During lunchtime, around approximately for a couple of hours, we would see him intently staring at a blank screen. And some of us would walk by to him, we teased him saying, what are you doing? You're just wasting your time. And he would do this at break time. He was quite respectful. He was the one who found the debris of that rocket, what is it called, Mars rover on the moon. It became a huge hype for us. The next few days, newspapers, telecasters, everybody were in the office. We got free branding, thanks to Shan, who's my happy colleague. We thought we will lose Shan after that, right? Because he became popular. ISRO wanted him. I remember the director of ISRO wanting to meet him, and he was invited there. We were dead sure we will lose him. But guess what? He's still with us. He's completed 11 years with us. And the reason he's with us is not because I'm paying him something great. I'm paying him competitive. I'm paying him very fairly. But he's with us because we gave him that space to exercise what he really wants beyond the work that he's doing. So I guess we need to take a very fine line approach to this whole concept. I'm not one of those leaders who will go hit the bandwagon saying all HR leaders are against it, so I need to be against it. No, I'm going to customize it to the needs of my organization. What kind of people do we want in our organization? What kind of culture do we want to build in our organization? And I'm going to walk that path.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's right that you're saying that we don't own people, so we only have them for work. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you are.
I somewhat agree with all of my colleagues. To add upon, if you are having a work of 4 hours or 5 hours, and if I have to relate it with the gig economy which is coming up, how many times you are going to stop this? It is just not possible. We need to accept it and embrace it. The time when the gig economy starts coming up and you become as a consultant or you are assigned to do only a particular job, why not I get an assignment from 4 or 5 companies and I complete my job on time? Nobody is going to ask whether it is a breach of my interest or have you signed the contract in the right manner or not. So that is something which we all need to start accepting it, and it is going to be a trend. These kids who are going to get into the marketplace might be that they may say that I am not going to work for a 9-to-5 job. I'll just take a consulting role, or I will be as a subject matter expert, finish this project at this particular time, nothing more than that. So that is a change, and I see that we need to embrace that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the future as well. So we are looking at maybe now it's become a smaller practices, but largely it may become a trend across organizations. Yeah, I think we are coming towards concluding it. I want to hear from your panelists because we've been deliberate about various things, ranging from workspace to challenges, leadership challenges, and your learnings. And looking at our theme for the deliberations. So how do you see what is the redesigning that we are looking at for the future? So maybe 1 or 2 points from your views. So maybe key picks that you say this is going to be the one we are going to reflect on when we are redesigning the future work.
I'll take it first. I did see that we are doing a lot of transformation journey as far as human resources is concerned. A lot of technology is in play. But what is paramount importance is the compassion, the respect for the people. If you do not have that, irrespective of whatever technology you come up with, it will falter, it will fail. So that human touch and that respect that respect generates when you start trusting somebody. Many a times it happens that, no, I trust, but this gentleman doesn't trust me. You need to first start trusting the person and start opening up. You will see that it creates a huge change altogether. We in Akshay Patra, we firmly believe and we keep propagating the fact that what is very important is trust. Irrespective of if somebody is on a higher side, a CXO or somebody is just started the career, we treat people the same how we treat others.
Yes, so very well said. I think that's the baseline, right? And it comes to the earlier point that I made. I think it's time for organizations to consider human beings as people of possibilities and less as resources. And your whole dimension of how you think of workplace, work, culture, engagement, everything changes. It boils down to that one individual that you want in the organization. And that's been my attempt. It's a hard attempt, but something that I'm enjoying.
Yeah, thank you for your views.
For me, everything that I agree with what Mukesh said. But just one more thing and this is what I think will the future look like. We didn't touch on diversity and the diverse skill sets and the kind of people that come to the workforce. I'll give you a real story. 2 months back, I was hiring a person, which I was telling yesterday to you, when we were sitting. Yeah, 2 months back, I put up a position on LinkedIn for a community manager. This was meant to be a person from a space of talent and culture and so on and so forth. I had a lot of people who applied for the job, and the person who actually finally got selected has come from a business background, worked for 5 years in a hardcore business role, client servicing relationship, is very happy doing this people culture kind of a role. And when I asked him that, why are you making this shift? He said, I've done what I had to do for 5 years and now I want to do something different. Though his education and his past experience and everything was very linear, but now he's willing to make that shift. And I think that's the big sort of new shift that I see happening. And the other one, which is more a personal thing, which again I was talking about yesterday, is that when I talk to my daughter, she's going to turn 12 years next month. When I ask her, what do you want to grow up to be? It's never one thing. She says she wants to become a chef and an architect because she wants to design the restaurant that she will run and cook food in. So that's the kind of future generation that we are going to look at. So we all need to sort of be able to embrace and navigate that new world, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you guys are thinking that, all right, these guys are saying things which we don't study in our books, let me bring you back to your books. So when you look at HR evolution, right, we spoke about the utility first. How do we see resources, human, what is the utility they bring in, right? Then the productivity came. Then we started talking about the engagement. And the new buzzword is the experience. Maybe it is not new, but it's the experience. So we have gone to the stage of changing our HR department, and we no more call it human resources, but people partner. And when you guys come into the mainstream, I am sure you had those 2 years, 3 years of experience where you have looked at HR people as somebody who is a yes man or a yes ma'am for the business, right? So right now, because of COVID, luckily, HR got the seat at the table. Now please don't lose it, because the business guys are very cruel. you make a mistake and you lose that seat. So the responsibility is on your shoulders now to hold that seat by being the partner for people. So don't take sides, bring the sides together.
Well said. Thank you so much. I think I wanted to just consolidate all the discussions so far we've been deliberating on. So if we look at now what we are looking at now, redesigning the future work, as he was saying, Mr. Tiwari was talking about a compassion. I think most of us agree with that. A compassion and respect for people and trust is a primary factor that we are going to look at from both the sides, either sides, where an employee as well as an employer. And also to adding on it, what we are looking at is, see people as a possibility, not as a resource. That will actually widens your perspective of how as an organization to bring them inside, not looking at them, keeping them in a sphere or outside to discuss what kind of a policy I can build in, rather than bring them in when I build the policy. Then I think major takeaways, I would say that flexibility and talking about a collaboration. So see them as a collaborative people who can collaborate with us and build the future workplace as well. And of course in empathy, and this one important which we could not spend much time on due to the time factor, diversity and inclusions, where we are talking about diversity in terms of various aspects, not only about from a gender diversity, we are talking about skill, academic, as well as various diversity level, we are talking about people are different. How as an organizations we are going to appreciate these differences and include them and see that you are having a space or designing a work meeting their requirements as well. I think that is what we are going to look at as a future of a work. So thank you for all the deliberations. And we have a few questions from the students. So students already had certain questions. I may pick up a few questions. Maybe it's a free flow. Whoever wants to address the questions, you can address. So the first question is related to communication. So this question is about, they're saying that with an increased risk of communication lag and social alienation due to the hybrid work or maybe a remote work. So how can project cycles be streamlined at the same time providing, ensuring the mental wellness for employees? So anybody wants to take up? They're talking about communication lag or maybe feeling of social alienations due to this hybrid or a remote work practice.
I don't think there is a lag in communication side. I think there is too much of a communication which is happening. But what is very important is communicate. Whether it is a good story to share or something which is not so very good, be truthful and respectful of the communication, what is important. I still remember the time in 2008 when the recession happened. What we did was be very open to our employees and communicated that things are not going good. Anything can go wrong. So that triggered at least the brains of the employees that, okay, something can go wrong also. I may lose my job or maybe lay off for some time. That is something very important. What was your next question?
So with that, maybe they perceive that communication is lagging, and probably they're also saying, how can you ensure that project cycle is streamlined at the same time, considering the mental wellness of an employee?
I can take that a bit. I mean, today, we're living in a world of advanced tools. You may have heard of some of these systems called Slack or Microsoft Teams or, Google Meets, etc. I think a lot of organizations are leveraging tools. You can't, step away from that. That's the best way, especially when you're having teams operating in a hybrid remote work environment. And the second thing is going back to your basics of management. It's all about planning effectively, creating a delegation structure, creating accountability, creating shared values. And of course, I know the reason I looked at Sajid was in IT, there is this whole process of agile, this whole process of Scrum, right? That's what you call Scrumming. Scrumming is one of the process they do. But all of that is about building effectiveness in communication. So as Mukesh said, I don't see there is an issue of communication lag as much as there is an overload of information, and the need is for project teams to have clarity on what is the right information and how do I structure it and work along with it. So for management students, just stick on to the basics. I always say when there is too much of distractions around you, quieten your mind and arrive at simple things that you can work on.
So I'll just add a bit. So when you come into the corporate world and when you are given that responsibility for communication, couple of things probably would have been taken care of. What needs to be communicated, the channel, and who's going to communicate. The extra bit that you can bring in is the targeted communication. The reason why I'm saying is, I asked somebody in my organization, oh, that email came, did you check? You're like, where did it come from? I said, from this email, which is like a generic mailbox. I'm sure you all have experiences. You might have received emails from your company without a name of a sender. There is a rule set that it goes into the trash. And I'm like, it's an important communication. The person is like, if it's important, it will reach me, right? So have that targeted communication mindset and your communication will be successful.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think, another interesting question, so probably, might be liking these questions. So how can you demonstrate to your employees that they are cared for and they are in a safe environment? So.
I'm happy to answer. I mean, I think through action and through intent, right? I mean, you need to do specific interventions and initiatives that make people feel that they sort of feel cared for, and also that there is a safe space in the organization, which is why the earlier example that I was giving, while I agree to the point that Sajjad made, which was around win for all, but to reach that stage, you need to sort of first create a normalization within the organization where everybody feels that they're equal and they're treated fairly, and which is why the employee resource groups that are focused on LGBTQI sensitization or women empowerment or mentoring and things like that. So those are all actions that create a positive impact in the organization for people to feel that they are cared for and there is a sense of belonging.
Okay, yeah. So anybody else want to add on for the question? So how do you pass on the message that they've been cared for?
Yeah, just yesterday I was having this talk at CII where I did a session on boundaryless leadership, and one of the things I said is the caring happens only when you remove hierarchy. Otherwise, you're not going to build trust and you're not going to exhibit that you care. So as leaders, it has to be a conscious effort, and all of you who are going to step out from here are going to get into those roles, right, as leaders, is to stop getting into that role with a sense that I'm here and I'm entitled to be here. The moment you do that, you are going to create a differentiation with your team, and they are not going to trust you and they're not going to come forward to you in a sense of vulnerability. As leaders, it's important to stay vulnerable, and it's okay to tell your team that I don't know, it's all right, and they will teach you. I think those are all moments when the team feels that, okay, here is a person I can entrust myself with. And once they entrust, then it's about, they'll start, talking to you, they start engaging with you, and then you put care, you add the celebrations around it and all of that. And this is why probably companies invest heavily on communities also, local communities. So the reason why businesses often, these days is a big thing, right? ESG, environment sustainability goals are a big thing for all companies. If you really look at the root cause, why are organizations required to do that when their whole primary purpose is to make money, is to inject a level of empathy and compassion into the system. That there's a level of empathy towards the environment, towards the planet, towards the people around. That empathy should reverse itself into the organization, right? So I have often seen when leaders invest time in serving communities, they turn extremely empathetic, extremely compassionate people. I'm glad to be sharing the stage with Mukesh here, who's from Akshaya Patra. They do some wonderful work. Now these are all introductions of compassion and empathy into the system.
Yeah.
I'll give you a very simple step that you can demonstrate when you become whatever role that you pick up in the HR fraternity. Is how do you show that you care for employee is when an employee comes, and I picked this from one of the great leader I worked in General Electric in my earlier stages of career. Every time somebody came to his desk, if he was working, he will put the flap down of his laptop. Plain simple. Undivided attention, and the impact of that discussion, even if the person came with some mindset for a solution, if this boss did not provide the solution, they would go happy because somebody listened to them.
Yeah, I think, very interesting. Yeah, that's true. That you pay attention, then the employees will feel that you've been cared for. So, Somebody is giving time for you to listen. Yeah, so I think this will be the last question. I'm going to club two questions together because we are already running out of time. So this question is about, maybe you're all been already discussing about it. When offices are reopening, employees are going to come back. So how you being as a leader or being HR professionals, what type of challenges you might face, how do you tackle it? Then also, this added question is that, maybe what students are saying that in the last few years, there are a lot of webinars were happening on mental health and well-being, and now employees are being coming back. So how do you see that we create a situation wherein employees are feel okay to seek help related to mental health?
I'm absolutely glad that mental well-being has come here after years long. I mean, I remember pre-pandemic, it used to be one good thing to do. If you did a mental well-being program, it was one good thing to do. And also, employees were not really forthcoming. We used to do sessions, and even before pandemic, we had a panel called as Employee Assistance Program, Magellan program. We barely had a couple of employees reaching out to them. Right? So the awareness, the personal courage was from both ends, that was lacking from both ends. I think pandemic taught us a lot, and again, those webinars and all of that. It is here to stay, and I'm so glad it is here to stay. Because people now have an avenue where they can open out and speak to people and feel comforted. I think end of the day, everybody wants to be just listened to, heard to, and then their problems being resolved. We have an in-house counselor, Professor, and when we started her off during pandemic, I think she used to get about 4 people access her out of a lot of reluctance, and all those 4 people used to reach her because we would encourage those employees, please go talk to Sama, and I'm sure she will have some way out from what you're facing. It was out of reluctance and out of a lot of compulsion. Today, on an average in a day, she has about 20 people accessing her. And not just employees, but also family members, which actually shows how important this is and how neglected this space has been. And even for those of you who are going to be leaders, this is one topic that you probably want to invest a little more, because there's a lot people don't tell you, and their struggles are hidden struggles. And for leaders, it's very important to sometimes just be aware of that internal struggle. It's not about resolving them. It's just about being aware so that you know how else to tailor the environment for his or her well-being in the organization.
Yeah, so as Hema said, it's not only that they will not tell you, they themselves are not aware that they are going through a mental health issue. And as future HR leaders, it is important that you pick up that mindset and start to look at the behaviors, the patterns, and open-ended questions, and come to the conclusion that there is a real issue going on here.
To add upon, many a times it happens, and that the person who is going through doesn't realizes, and if you say that, why don't you go and meet a counselor, the instant answer will be, मैं पागल हूँ क्या? मुझे कोई problem नहीं. So that is something that, and we Indians have that tendency of giving free advices to whoever comes. Instead of doing that, because mental health is something very, very serious cause. True. Do not do that. Put him across to the right person who is professional. And then you see that there is a transformation which happens. But we are, as a corporate also, we are very, very mindful about this mental health or mental well-being, how to continue to keep your employees engaged, not only physically but also mentally, because that is where the key happens.
Yeah, I think I do agree. It is not only about corporate life, and we also see many of our students experience these mental health issues, and as a faculty advisors or a faculties, they approach us, and probably we also realize that we are not an expert to give them an advice. So we always refer to our professionals, and we have a very active counselors, and we also realize as an education institution, yes, students do go through these mental health issues. That awareness has come up, and even students, as you said, I think I do agree with all of you that now people started to seek support or help for those mental health issues. That's actually a welcome change that we are looking at in a society where it's always a stigmatized that somebody seeks help for a mental health issues. So yeah, I think that's very important. The change has come from the seekers as well. That it will be a welcome for an organization that you are opening up to support them as well. So thank you so much for spending your time on the deliberations on the topic as well as taking certain questions. I think we formally concluded, and then over to the students.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
And thanks to you guys, because Saturday I know and somebody was monitoring your attendance also, I saw. So thanks for coming.
We would like to take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to all the panelists. We appreciate you for taking out the time to address all of our concerns and providing clarity of thought for our inquisitive minds.
To venerate their presence and for elevating this gathering with their stimulating thoughts, we would like to invite our faculty members to present a memento to our speakers as a token of thanks.
We humbly request Professor Parma Barai to present a token of gratitude to Ms. Apurva Bapna. Thank you, Parma ma'am.
Moving forward, we would like to invite our Professor Vimla Rani to honor Ms. Hema Mani with a token of appreciation. Thank you, Vimla ma'am.
Next, we would like to invite Professor Chandrasekhar Mishra to present Mr. Mukesh Tiwari with a token of gratitude. Thank you, C.S. Mishra, sir.
We would like to humbly request Ajay Mishra, sir, to present our panelist, Mr. Sajid Ahmed, with a token of appreciation. We would now like to invite our VGSoM Student Council President, Ms. Aditi Samanta, to present Professor Srinivasan S. with a token of gratitude.
Creativity involves breaking out of established patterns in order to look at things in a different way. With this, we come to the end of our discourse. We would like to express our gratitude to all the guests once again for fashioning a spectacular synergy of minds and taking us on this memorable journey through the subtle nuances of re-envisioning the future of work.
The time has arrived to navigate to tomorrow's work paradigm, resonating with changing times. Today's discussion resolutely emphasized the same. On behalf of the Vinod Gupta School of Management, IIT Kharagpur, we express our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panel, whose thoughts and insights have provided us with a multidisciplinary approach in confronting modern-day affairs. Your comprehension of how a precarious event has changed the way of working and how redesigning the future has become imperative in building resilience to meet the uncertainties of tomorrow will definitely refine the outlook of the batches.
We are also grateful to Professor Naigan, our respected Dean, Professor Ray, Advisor VGSoM, Professor Srinivasan, our moderator, and all of our faculty members for their presence and unconditional support. Finally, we would like to express our gratitude to our enthusiastic audience, without whom Vaachna 2022 would not have been possible. As the curtain falls on Vaachna 2022, we would like to thank everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning to be a part of this momentous occasion. Today, we conclude on an ambitious note, promising to continue presenting you with new and diverse perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, we bid adieu. We humbly request the batch to remain seated, and we request the CMI members to direct the guests and faculties for post-event proceedings.